We get feedback between me and you.
Hold on.
Where's my? Right. Testing one. Hey, Fred, we're just waiting for Jeremy to mute his microphone.
What now?
Yeah, you.
I see. Yes. What now, Steve?
How about now?
Perfect.
Good. Hey, Fred, I got talk with Jim Cameron. I think you're on, maybe.
Commissioners, some of the webcams on. Very hard to see.
Kara Gately, I see her. I see. Why don't all the commissioners turn your microphones on for a second? Jim Rand, I see him. I don't see Larry Warble. Yeah, there's Larry.
George Riley.
I see Larry. George Riley.
Larry
And
Warble.
then Jennifer Leahy. She around? Jen, are you here? Jen just arrived.
Yes.
Hi, Jen.
Where's Jen? Yeah.
Jen, camera on. I mean, mic on.
I see Jen. Okay, Fred, we have everybody. Jim Cameron, is he on someplace?
This conference will now be recorded.
Channel
Okay.
7.
Jim Cameron, we're going to start if you're on someplace. Anybody see Jim Cameron? Fred, do you see Jim Cameron?
Jim is on, yes.
Okay, great. All right. Here we go, Fred. We're going to go. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Tonight is Tuesday, March 24th. It is
November.
Starting off with a bang. Tonight is Tuesday, November 24th. It's about 8:02 p.m. We're doing the planning and zoning public hearing and a general meeting after. Tonight's meeting is being held in room 213 in Town Hall, and we're also having it via GoToMeeting with the virtual meeting. Tonight we have a public hearing, and like I said, we have a general meeting. Before we get started, I'm just going to read a little bit of notes. First off, there's a lot of people on the screen and there's a lot of people that are here. I thank you very much for logging in tonight. I just have a couple opening comments and ground rules for tonight. Hello, I am Stephen Avati. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I thank you for your attention to our board and our commission and what we're doing. And one of the applications that I think everyone's here to see. I've been on P&Z for about 7 years. And Jeremy Ginsburg, who's here, has been in the planning and zoning department for 25 years, and he's never seen this much activity on one application. Excuse me. Tonight we're going to talk about an application. I'll introduce it in a minute. It's for lack of a better word, it's 7-Eleven that's going to locate over, or also locate over at where Dutchess is. This is is going to be the fourth Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on this matter. To date, we've had about 6.5 hours of meetings plus 5 other meetings on this application with the Architectural Review Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and also the Environmental Protection Commission. The application was filed on September 13th. As a commission, we're required to act on all applications that are filed depending on the nature and type of the application. And they must be reviewed and analyzed in accordance with our 2016 Town Plan of Conservation and Development, and in accordance with our own town regulations. Special permit applications have additional level of review and standards which they must meet as per regulations 1000 through 1005 and others in our regulations. Just for everyone's information, the amount of public support or opposition do any application is not a legal reason to approve an application or to deny an application. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a quasi judicial board that acts based upon our interpretation of our current zoning regulations. It does not make a final determination based upon any townwide petitions, public outcry, or public. We do not discriminate based on an applicant. We do not discriminate on small business, large businesses, or companies. We also do not discriminate on the patrons or employees of any business that want to locate or open within the town of Darien or an open town. The application for 7-Eleven will not close tonight. We're looking to add another meeting and hearing during the first week of December. It likely will be, I think, either December 8th or 9th. That's a Tuesday or a Wednesday. We typically do not have planning and zoning commissions meetings in the month of December. I do want to state firmly and clearly that if you have submitted an email for the record, the email has been included in the record. It was a copy of that was given either electronically or in hard copy to all the members of the commission. It's posted on the town website. Emails and notes and letters do carry the same weight as someone that's going to speak to a matter tonight or at any other meeting. It appears that we may have some speakers tonight, this evening. If you do want to speak, that's great. We encourage that. Please state your name and your address clearly for the record. This is being recorded electronically by Vimeo. It's also being recorded by TV 79, and there were also minutes that are posted after. For tonight's meeting, we're going to start with everyone on mute. That helps to minimize background noise and technical feedback. Our senior planner, Fred Donite, is going to be in charge of that. Fred's picture on my screen is next to me, if that means anything to anybody else. If someone speaks, please do not repeat what another speaker said. I mean, you're allowed to read your email into the record, but your email is already in the record. We don't really encourage that. You can paraphrase it. We don't have the emails and correspondence in, but I've read over 60 of them, and there's probably another 40 that we've also received. They come in every day, and there was some that came in today that are in the record that I honestly have not read at this point, but I will. Tonight, we're going to start with the applicant and their comments and presentations. That's going to be followed by public comments. We expect to stop taking testimony on this application at about 5 to 10 o'clock. So we're going to dedicate 2 hours to the application. And then we have to get on to other matters we have on our agenda for tonight. As I said earlier, the public hearing is not going to be continued to another night. We'll give another date later in the meeting. So if you don't get a chance to speak tonight, you'll have another chance at it. If you do wish to speak, in the upper right-hand corner of your computers, there's a thing called the chat box. Right now, there's 3 chats in the chat box. Add your name to that, and then Mr. Donite will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. And we'll see however many speakers we can have tonight in that time frame. Everyone speaks for 3 minutes, and we get 10 of them. That's a half an hour. It's pretty simple math. I just want to confirm that tonight is not the last public hearing. So if you don't get a chance to speak, there's going to be another opportunity. Once all the public P&Z hearings are concluded on this matter, the town has 65 days to close the hearing. At this point in time, we are still waiting for some traffic studies being done by the applicant and being reviewed by the town. We're also waiting for the police department and the local traffic authority wants to read those traffic studies. We don't think that's going to happen until January. As a planning zoning commission, we typically do not have a meeting in the month of December after the town hall speech, which is now scheduled for Monday, December 7th. We are going to have one. And then I think we're gonna suspend this hearing until January. What else? Once the hearing is concluded, yeah, once the hearing is concluded and we do close the hearing, neither the applicant nor the general public can enter in any information into the record. So the only time to get information before the hearing closes is before the hearing closes. At this point, we think is gonna be January. I hope it doesn't go until February. With that said, we're probably not gonna decide on this application until the end of March. Okay, with that said, let's get the ball rolling. Did I miss anything, Jeremy?
No, if you just want to announce that 26
Oh.
feet.
We have an application on the agenda tonight, which is, where is it? It's on the second to last one.
Yeah, fourth one.
Sanford and Deborah Rich have an application for 26 Beach Drive. That application has been proposed. So if you're here for 26 Beach Drive, we're not going to talk about that.
It'll be continued to Tuesday, December 1st at 8 p.m.
Okay. The 26 Beach Drive is going to be Tuesday, December 1st at 8 p.m. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Good. Okay. Here we go. Continuation of the public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the Darien zoning regulations, COZR number 4-2020, business site plan application number 128B as in boy, special permit application number 314, 711, Inc., 306 Boston Post Road. Proposed to amend sections 210, 755, 904 and 1056 of the Darien zoning regulations relative to motor vehicle service stations, including gas stations. The intent of the proposed regulation amendments are to distinguish gas stations from repair shops and to modernize the standards to reflect customary accessory convenience store and food related offerings. The full text proposal amendment is on file and available at the town clerk's office and the planning zoning office for inspection and online at www.dariencT.gov/PZC pending application. Proposal to raise the existing Duchess restaurant on the site and to redevelop the site as a 7-Eleven gas station with associated convenience retail and accessory quick service restaurant in a new 4,050 square foot building and perform related site home activities. 12 self-service fuel positions with an overhead canopy would occupy the site. The 1.04 plus minus acres subject property is located on the southeast side of Boston Post Road, approximately 125 feet northeast of the intersection with Birch Road, and is shown on Assessor's Map number 32 as lot number 9 in the Service Business SBZ zone. The public hearing on this matter was opened on September 22nd. The applicant tonight, we should have Amy Sushins, as you pronounce it. She represents, there she is in the middle. Thank you, Amy. She represents 7-Eleven and her as a big team. Amy did submit a memo to the commission that's dated November 19th. Amy, I do have some questions on your memo that you submitted, but I understand that you have a agenda that you want to start with. So I will leave that up to you, and then hopefully I can ask my questions relative to your memo and some of the new plans that you submitted to the application. Does that sound right?
We can certainly do that. Amy Sushins, for the record, here representing the applicant, 7-Eleven. We had planned to focus on architecture and if there are, maximize time for public comment, but it's certainly if there are questions that you or other members of the commission have, we're happy to speak to those.
Okay. So you want to do you have the new architectural plans, you have a site plan, and you have a signage plan, basically that you submitted this week.
Right.
Okay. Then you have the memo, and we did just make sure we're on the same page. We did not get any additional information from your traffic consultant, Malone, correct?
Nope. Mr.
I-
Young.
Jason Adams.
Right, but the name of his firm is McMahon. That's the name of his firm.
McMahon Associates.
Right, so we didn't receive anything. He's still pending.
Correct. He's still, he's coordinating with Mr. Galante.
Oh, there you are. You moved on me. You moved to a different spot, so I couldn't see your face.
That's happened to me as well.
Okay. So why don't you go first? You can talk about your architecture, and then I'll talk about my stuff, and then we could talk about some of your other plans you submitted. And then I think check in with the commissioners with any questions they have, and then we'll open up to the general public if you don't mind.
Okay, great. As I said, Amy Suchins here representing 7-Eleven, the applicant before you. If I could take 90 seconds just to go through a couple of background items that I think the commission is aware of over the course of our presentation, but that with the larger public audience that maybe hasn't watched all of the several hours of testimony, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, we're on our 4th night of the public hearing. This is a new state-of-the-art facility for 7-Eleven. There is nothing like this store and gas station located anywhere in New England. This is a brand new concept that will be corporate owned, corporate operated. It's not a franchise model that this is, as this will operate. And as a result of that, this proposal has been not only designed specifically with Darien in mind, but also this site in mind specifically. It's not a standard prototype, nor was it taken from a different location or not given thought as to its location, not only, as I said, not only in Darien, but on the Boston Post Road. One other, I think, important item, because it came up in a number of the public comments that we saw, this site is not designed to attract tractor trailer fueling. Those type of tractor trailer trucks need high-speed capacity pumps that are existing and located at the rest area. There are none of those proposed, as we talked about earlier in the hearing. There's none of those proposed for this location. As you noted, Environmental Protection Commission offered its, provided its approval back in August, and over the course of the last 2 months, we've already satisfied a number of the technical and engineering comments that have been provided by your team and the various staff members, including the town's peer review from Ty and Bond on the engineering and comments from the fire marshal. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, we submitted a memorandum on a couple of the operational questions that you had for us at the last hearing. And Mike Galante and Jason Adams, your peer reviewer and our traffic engineer, continue to work on some of the, frankly, details of site traffic and trip distribution to and from the site. So with that in mind, what we wanted to do this evening is focus on the updated architecture for the building, and that presentation will be handled predominantly by James Owens, who's our architect and was one of the presenters in our initial presentation back in September, and then also some comments from Thomas Mills, who is our asset protection specialist, and some of the questions that came up at the last hearing with respect to design of the building satisfying the corporate design policies. So just by way of background, before I turn it over to James for the substantive architecture presentation, I wanted to give you a brief background of what we've done with the ARB. The initial building was submitted to them back in September. That's part of what was in your original materials, that building design. We received a number of comments at their first meeting when we were for them in September, and specifically, James will walk you through all of the details that I'm going to overview, but their main comments were that the entrance massing was too large and that they felt the overall building needed some more architectural interest. They specifically asked for material samples, alternative color palettes, all of which we provided in a submission to them after that meeting. We also made some significant changes to the building to try and address those comments, which frankly were quite broad and not specific to Windows design or a specific material. They were some general design concepts, I would describe them. So we provided those. We provided, as they had requested, building materials, alternate color schemes, as well as some additional architectural details. We went back to them in October, had another pretty fulsome conversation about what the revisions were, and ultimately where we wound up was that the various commission members seemed to have almost conflicting opinions. Somebody liked one element of design while another person didn't like that element. And so what was offered by the ARB chairwoman and we did engage in was to attempt to have a further dialogue about some additional revisions that we could work with. We gave the ARB another 3 preliminary designs that tried to incorporate some of the broad concepts. It's a little bit hard when the comment is that the building reads busy, but they had also asked for additional architectural detail to try and reconcile the comments from multiple board members. So we provided those materials in a informal format. We also provided them a copy of the frankly the corporate prototype building, which is a much more contemporary and less New England style building for further discussion. After that preliminary discussion, we still could not reach any consensus among the ARB members as to how they would like to see the building design progress. And as a result, we had an extensive conversation with both your staff, with Jeremy and Fred, and also with ARB staff, Dave Keating, about what they would recommend as far as trying to address or satisfy some of the ARB concerns, and the fact that we couldn't get, frankly, even a plurality of members to agree on certain design elements. So with that, we made a decision, certainly not made lightly, to proceed with the negative referral that we had from the ARB and move forward to bring what we believe to be the final building design to you. And James is going to walk you through not only this design, but also all the comments that we had received from the ARB with respect to the design guidelines, the broad concepts that they had outlined, and explain to you why we believe this satisfies the goals outlined in your regulations. So just in the interest of time, James is going to walk through the proposal, if there is, or through the architecture, if we can try and keep, obviously if there's a pressing question, we could do that, but if we could keep any of the commission questions just to the end of the presentation, I think that will help us move it along and try and leave as much time as necessary for the public. So with that, I will turn it over to James.
Thanks, Amy. I'm going to give a little bit of background. So if you want to start pulling up the presentation, you can probably just land on the site plan. So for the record, I'm James Owens. I'm a licensed architect with Harrison French and Associates. And so Amy mentioned we presented to this board before, but I'd like to just give a brief overview of HFA. I think it's important to understand why 7-Eleven decided to partner with HFA for this project and why we are uniquely qualified with our expertise to be here this evening. So 7-Eleven does have a group of preferred design professionals that they work with. In fact, we've actually been collaborating with a design partner in Texas who's been preparing the interior layout. But for this project, 7-Eleven assembled a team that they vetted and believed would be uniquely qualified for this to be the most successful project. And HFA has offices in New England. We do a lot of design work in New England, and we felt we were better qualified to be here presenting to you this evening than a firm from Texas or anywhere else. So we knew right out of the gate, as Amy mentioned, that this was going to be not the standard out of the box 7-Eleven design, but we would design a very unique project that would fit into the community of Darien, given all the unique aspects of this project. So just a little bit of background about HFA and myself. HFA is a national design firm with expertise in convenience stores. We've designed over 2,300 convenience stores in over 1,900 communities. And personally, I've designed architecture for 20 years in New England. I've designed almost 300 convenience stores, and just in Connecticut, I've designed at least 30 convenience stores. So we believe that, you know, the question was raised earlier, has HFA or myself designed a project specifically in Darien? And the answer is no. But we believe that we have very specialized expertise in designing successful C-stores, which we have a positive track record that we can show. And I don't want to downplay Darien here. Darien is a beautiful community, and more importantly, is your community. And we appreciate the fact that everyone on this call is passionate about their community, and they want to see the best project put forward, which we believe, in our professional opinion, we have done. However, I can say honestly that the concerns expressed by this board and others are not uncommon. We have heard them all before. It's always traffic, noise, crime, lighting, aesthetics. We've heard them all. And having heard all these concerns in the past, we've addressed them. They're not unique to us. And so we believe that we've designed a successful project for this location that addresses all of the concerns of the key stakeholders, which consists of our client, the town of Darien, the neighbors, and ultimately the community. So I'm going to just talk. Amy mentioned before, this is our 4th time presenting in front of this board. So I've been asked to keep my presentation specific to the overall architecture. And Amy, as I talk, if you want to just thumb through the previous design options, I'm not going to talk specifically about any. I'm just going to talk about them in broad terms. So as Amy mentioned, and as you know, we've prepared multiple design submissions. Yep.
James, can I interrupt 1 second?
Sure.
Where do you actually sit? Where's your office? Are you in New England? Are you in South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas?
No, I'm in Franklin, Massachusetts, which is just west of Boston.
Oh, you don't have the accent that Tommy has. Okay.
I try very hard to hide it, but occasionally you will hear me say wicked hard.
All right,
So,
cool. Got it.
Okay, great. All right, so again, I'm just going to talk about the previous design submissions.
Yeah, don't tell too much on the past.
No, understood. So again, as many of you know, we did not receive a positive recommendation. We believe that this project is very unique. You know, we have grocery, we have fueling, we have food service, and that makes it challenging. So I just want to point out, as part of our design submissions, we've used the town of Darien commercial design guidelines, which are just that. They're guidelines to help inform our design decision-making process. And with each presentation that we made to the ARB, we listened to the comments, and we believe we made strong efforts to address any of the concerns that were raised. We believe that our client has acted in good faith in vetting through a number of design options and solutions at both a significant design cost and ultimately a significant impact on the viability of this project. And so unlike some more engineering driven board requirements, architectural review is very, it's not prescriptive based where you can go to a code book and check off that you provided 2 dormers, double hung windows. Architectural design is more qualitative based, which is based on criteria such as scale, proportions, pleasing aesthetics. And unfortunately, sometimes personal preference does come into play. I like blue, you like red, but ultimately, the ultimate objective is to provide a design solution that is complementary to the character of Darien, which again, we feel we've been able to provide. And so, you know, there were some broad comments about I don't like it or the proportions are wrong, and we can all just agree to disagree. So with that, Amy, if you want to pull up the new elevation, I'm going to talk about.
One, there's submission one, was knocked out. Then you put in submission two, and that you knocked out. Now you're up to current, so that's submission three, basically.
Correct. And submission three, there was an informal submission three where we had prepared some design sketches that Amy had mentioned outside of the normal hearing process to get some dialogue. So technically that was our third submission with the board, not a formal submission. What you're seeing now is the current, which we'll call our fourth crack at it, or fourth design option. And so that's, Amy, if you want to pull that one up, elevations current. Thank you. Okay, so through that design process, what you'll see is, we're really landed on a simplification of the design. Earlier designs had included brick veneer, but again, there cannot be a general consensus that we could, really obtain about the color of the brick or how the brick would interface with the siding. So we've decided to keep the palette very simple, use traditional New England materials, clapboards and shingles. We've eliminated the use of vinyl siding to be consistent with the design guidelines, which state, quote, specifically avoid the use of vinyl siding. Again, we presented several color options, but ultimately we are presenting a very neutral palette so that we're not too bold or distracting. Again, we're looking to fit into the community. We're not looking to go against it. Again, this color palette, we believe, complies with the design guidelines, which state to, quote, coordinate a color scheme and materials with neighboring buildings to reinforce harmony, which, again, we believe we've done. We've shown past examples of the surrounding context. Roof lines and roofscapes were discussed at length, and ultimately, we did change the overall roof pitch and proportions, and we negotiated around the overall building height so that we're not too steep or too tall. Dormers were something that were debated and discussed at multiple points. Ultimately, we decided to remove them altogether since there was really not a general consensus about the size and the proportions and if they were needed. Ultimately, we took a less is more approach by removing, and in fact, there's really no second floor on this building, so it's just the attic. So, again, we're being authentic in our architectural detailing, which is consistent with the design guidelines. The glazing in the windows, that was another point of discussion. Ultimately, we integrated traditional double hung windows to create a streetscape on the Boston Post Road elevation, as well as on the canopy side elevation, we've introduced a storefront commercial system to maximize the sight lines to the fuel dispensers for both security and safety. And again, to tie it back to the design guidelines, the windows have been arranged, quote, in a balanced spacing in conscious rhythm. The Boston Post Road elevation, which is the bottom elevation there, that's going to be the street elevation. We've introduced deep rakes, pilasters, and cornices, again, to comply with the design guidelines to create, quote, visual variety and establish character by using architectural elements. Additionally, I'd like to point out that on that Boston Post Road elevation, which is in the bottom, this is the short elevation of the building, not the long elevation. We heard criticism early in the ARB hearings that we were designing in a vacuum and we're ignoring the adjacent residential neighborhood. We would just argue that we did quite the opposite. And by, in fact, positioning the building the way that we did, we have created a scaled elevation that is much more respectful in keeping with the neighborhood. So instead of having a 90 feet of frontage, we cut it in half to 45. On that top elevation, the side facing the fuel, the main entrance at the fuel elevation, again, that was discussed at length about being, some of the feedback was that the size, the scale, the portion is too large. Ultimately, we altered the design to be a very simple, a gable over the entrance, which, again, per the design guidelines, is to accentuate the entrance with strong definition, which we believe we've done. I would like to point out that the storefront glazing there on that long elevation provides uninterrupted views to the pumps and conversely allows uninterrupted sightlines into the store, and thus any security and or safety concerns have been mitigated. So the south facing elevation.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Sure.
This is important. Can you go to the last page, which is your floor plan?
Yeah,
And
and if you can, yeah.
Bingo. Okay. Do you have access to a pointer? Or does anybody have access?
Amy can use her her cursor.
Okay. Can you show me where the cash registers are, where you pay your money?
Yeah, Amy's got it right there with that circle. That's where you're standing.
Okay. So this is going, I'm going directly to the sentence that you just said. Okay, that circle is, I think it's 7 feet off of the glazed window. And if I can do it quicker because I can flip back and forth. That circle, what it is right behind the roost sign. If you go to the elevation page. Okay.
Sure. So if I could point on that floor plan, Amy, if you could just stay in that floor plan for one moment.
Sorry.
Okay, and you just said the word uninterrupted, and I'm gonna land the plane in a minute. But you have to work with me. In front of the window where it says roost, there's a lotto stand and checker. Okay. That's where the sign says roost. The window to the right of that on your front elevation is blank. That's a false window. Correct?
We could go to the elevations in a moment. The window behind the lotto, that'll be a low lottery station. So the glazing above the lottery counter would be visible and not obscured.
Okay. So I'm standing checking my lotto ticket. I'm 6'2", right? The guy at the cashier is looking over my head to the gas pumps. Is that right? And I'm looking through a backlit sign that says roost.
Sure. So
It's a yes or no.
Sure. There's somebody standing at the lottery station. If that is a concern, that's something we can absolutely address and try to work around that. My focus tonight is to talk about the architecture, not the interior layout.
Right, but we're talking about, you brought up the word unobstructed views of the gas pump from the cashier's desk, right? And this is going to relate back to Amy's memo about the fishbowl design. Those windows that are facing the post road, which is a 45-foot frontage, all those windows are false windows, correct?
If I can point out that the false windows are, we can go to the elevation. If I could continue with the presentation, I think that'll be helpful. If it's an interior design layout, I think absolutely we can address it and make sure that the interior layout relates to the exterior architecture and the concerns that are being raised. So duly noted, we can look at that, the position of that interior piece of cabinetry and find the best and most appropriate location for it.
Okay.
And Mr. Mulvaney, Tom Mills is intending to comment after James's presentation, so we can certainly, he can certainly address the question as well.
That's great, because at the end of your memo, you talk about the fishbowl thing, and that's something that Tom came up with. I just want to make sure that you guys are on the same page relative to the fishbowl design and the architecture, because Tom never saw those things. And we're talking about windows that face the post road, and those are false windows. You can't see through.
Right, which is why we wanted to have him affirmatively address the fact he's looked at the architecture and the floor plan as compared to, and looked at the corporate standards to ensure that fishbowl effect, et cetera, video system, et cetera, are all addressed in this plan. So he can touch on that when James gets done with the architecture.
I apologize.
No.
And I don't want to overlook the fact. Again, those are good points. We stand by what our intent is. If there's ways that we can improve it, we'll look at that. I do want to point out on that floor plan, the floor plan too. It is a bit outdated. you can see those large architectural columns, which are at the, right outside the entrance.
Yeah,
Those
I'm
again,
just
those
focused-
block that
I'm just
visibility.
focused on windows. I'm gonna focus on windows and sightlines.
Sure. So those large column piers on the floor plan previously would have maybe inhibited the sight lines. And so again, based on the feedback that we got from the design review board, based on the feedback that we're getting from this board, we've simplified the entrance architecture to eliminate those large piers, again, to help with that visibility. So again, we're listening, we're hearing the feedback, and we're trying to address it. So Amy, if you want to go back to the rear elevation, I think I was done talking about the Boston Post roadside elevation and the canopy elevation, and we'll just jump to the rear elevation and the canopy, and I think that will really address all of the architecture that we were looking to present tonight, and then we can open it to specific discussion. So back to the south-facing elevation here. This is our rear-facing elevation, which is really adjacent to the office building, and we understand that there's been some concerns raised from that property that they don't want to be looking onto our mechanical equipment. So again, we've tried to address this. We've listened to these concerns. We've tastefully increased the height of the screening wall, which we've made solid, not open. And we believe that this is really an improvement over how the previous building had concealed their rooftop mechanical equipment, which was just open and you could see onto it. Amy, if you want to go to the next slide, which is the renderings, I just want to talk about the fuel canopy for a little bit. So in regards to the fuel canopy, I mean, this was something that we didn't receive a lot of specific comments from the other boards, only in general that the fuel canopy should marry architecturally with the building architecture. And so we believe we've achieved this now. In a lot of the earlier designs, we had just a very simple, flat white canopy, no architectural detail. And so the final proposed canopy actually incorporates a sloped roof profile similar to the building, clad in identical roof shingles. The fascia canopy around the canopy incorporates a very simple white cornice detail that is consistent with the building design detailing. And again, in accordance with design regulations, there's been no signage, branding, or anything provided on the fuel canopy. So with that, again, I'm going to pause here because again, I was going to keep my presentation focused on the building architecture and the canopy, and we can certainly go back and revisit windows or any other comments that the board may have. Amy, I don't know if you want to transition over here to Tom.
Well, you're still there. So if you can go back to that other picture with the two elevations, Amy, I just want to make sure for the record that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, which elevation? I'm sorry.
It says exterior elevations current.
The Boston Post road elevation, Amy, the 2D and the canopy elevation, and
No.
other way.
Oh, the elevations. I'm sorry.
Yeah, elevation. Yeah, exactly.
PG.
There you go. Stop.
Bingo. Okay. And this is me. You just got to make sure we're on the same page. On the bottom picture, which is the west elevation facing Boston Post Road, those three windows are fake.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. On the front elevation facing the fuel pumps, the window that's all the way to the right, that is fake.
Correct.
Okay. So then where the roost sign is, behind roost is your lotto stand.
That is a real window. That is transparent.
Right. And the lotto checking station is right behind it.
Correct.
Okay. Then
So-
there's a whole. Then
Sorry,
there's a
I
whole.
don't mean to interrupt, but you're going to ask a lot of questions about the floor plan. This is Christina Pimenta from the construction team at 7-Eleven. The floor plan is generic in nature, which we put together to show you what the floor plan could look like for this square footage. What we will do once we know what we're looking at for real windows, false windows, is go back to our floor plan design team to make sure that the interior has clean sight lines. Unfortunately, we can't redesign the floor plan every time we do a submittal because we're not 100% sure what the town is looking for right now. But our intent 100% is to make sure that we deliver a store that has clean sight lines to the parking lot, to the pumps, to make sure that our employees and our customers are safe.
So right now, though, this current plan does not have that, right?
The floor plan that's attached is a generic floor plan in nature, yes.
Not a specifically designed plan for Darien, like the architect said.
This is James from HFA. There's been so many, it is not current to the proposed architecture that you see in front of you. There's been so many iterations with the different design boards.
Yeah.
That the floor plan will need to be updated once a final elevation is approved.
I was just confused because you started off saying that this was specifically designed for this community in nature, in keeping Darien in mind, for this community, for this town, conscious of its small town character and being in New England. And then to hear another member of the team say, this is just a generic floor plan, so don't worry about non-transparent windows, don't worry about sight lines. It's just a confusing message. So maybe I'm confused by it, but I'm sure you guys will clarify that for us at some point.
So I think that the confusion is that what he is presenting on is the architectural elements, not the floor plan. The floor plan is the interior. He's working on the outside to make sure that you are happy with the materials and the look and feel of the building for the community. So I apologize if there was a misunderstanding there.
There's also
That's okay.
another member of the team who spoke about, fishbowl and security and sightlines also. So it's all becoming quite conflicting. So maybe
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that, Karen.
her memo, maybe it'll become more clear.
Okay, that's it. What I'm trying to, and Amy, I mean, you were there last week with Tommy, and I'm not sure if James was there or not, or I think Christina was there. But I'm just trying to make sure that the crime prevention people and the architects are on the same page. So it looks like, and you guys can submit stuff whatever you want through the hearing's still open. You just got to tell us when the hearing's when you're going to submit the floor plan to match with the windows, because I still got to hear from Tommy, or we have to hear from Tommy that he's agreed with everything you said. So I'm just saying if there's 3 guys checking their lotto tickets and there's something going on at the pumps, the clerk that's at the cash is looking through 3 guys checking their lotto tickets, and someone's walking down that hallway going to the bathroom. If it's going to change, that's fine. You can tell me it's going to change. I don't mind. But I don't want to say that there's 3 windows on the post road, and I know they're false. There's windows on the side elevation facing the pumps, and I know they're false. Correct sight line to the pumps, and according to the floor plan, it's not right. You can do whatever you want submitting stuff. It's your application. If we have to extend it, we have to extend it. But I don't want to waste my time looking at the floor plan if it's going to change.
This is James from HFA. This is James from HFA. If we can walk away from the board tonight that the overall architecture as presented is acceptable, then absolutely, I think Christina's right. We'll submit a floor plan for record that has that. I think that would be a win for everybody.
But I'm sorry, I'm still confused on the windows. So so the windows on both sides, on the left of, I also don't, from what I see, so we're talking about
commission member. Go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jennifer Leahy. So on the right, we have the roost, and it looks like a single window. And in the front, I see 41 and 40 on page 18. And on the other side, I see 41 and 40, which I'm assuming is similar windows, but on the 7-Eleven side, and Steve, help me if I'm getting confused, I see triple panes, right? So 2 on the side, the larger in the middle. And there's also on that floor plan on that side, which I guess you guys kind of plopped something in and didn't really put too much thought into it. But there's also, what is 3049 and 3049? It seems like there's stuff blocking it on that side as well. But the windows, I don't know. I'm just looking at them. They don't look like the same size as what from your elevation, your exterior elevation that I'm looking at. If you guys see that on Roost on the right side, that window doesn't look the same as what's on the 7-Eleven side. I'm just a little bit confused on how this all matches up.
So if I could, Amy Suchins, if I could clarify, because I can circle, your question is whether the roost window that I'm circling is the same as the 7-Eleven window I'm circling?
Yeah, based on the floor plan, it looks like it should be, but it's not.
Again, this is James from HFA. Why don't we, if we should keep the attention on the elevations, because that would be the.
So if you could answer the question, that'd be great. So on the elevation, I see one big window on the right, which will be what we're looking out at for a safety concern, but I'm just looking at the outside. And on the left, there's 3 windows, which you can all look out at. So when I'm looking at page 18, they're not equidistant on that. It doesn't look like what I'm seeing on the elevation. So it's not matching up.
That's correct.
Okay, so this whole page 18, almost, it's like it should not even be in this packet.
Correct.
Okay,
Page
that's
18.
fine. If it's so confusing as someone who looks at elevations and floor plans. Okay, so page 18, basically. Okay, so I don't know why it was not done. It's a little confusing. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And then if you look at page 18, no, I guess it's okay. Okay, so we don't have the answer to that question. Then let me go back to another question, which is kind of sort of related to site plan and kind of sort of related to Amy's memo. Where the propane tank's going to be, the firewood and the plant sale is going to be. What window are you sticking them in front of? There's going to be a thing that says like Blue Rhino. Where's that going?
Let me scroll up to the site plan. Jim Bernardino,
Yes,
Are
Amy.
there you go. Could you?
Yep, I'll answer that, Amy. Jim Bernardino, Core Engineering. We are currently showing the exterior, we call them propane cages for safety concerns for the storage. They're going to be located on the eastern building elevation, which is basically plan north, adjacent to the loading area and the trash enclosure. So they're basically around the back side of the building.
All right, so let's go with the elevations then. So on page, so your Blue Rhino thing where I can get my gas tank on page 9 is on that wall on the bottom.
Yes.
Again, this is James Owens from HFA, the architect. You are correct. The bottom elevation, as Jim Bernardino just stated from the civil side.
Okay, so that's where the propane thing. Now, where's the firewood sales and the plant sales going? What window is that going to stick in front of?
We certainly, this is Amy. Certainly that would be seasonal items we would make sure, as we noted in the memo, that would be orderly. We do not expect that to block any of the windows.
So it's going on the front elevation?
We could certainly discuss where it would be located, but we're not intending to block any of the windows.
I wouldn't block the windows either, because if someone's getting a thing of wood, they're gonna bust the window. But I just want to know where it's gonna sit. That's all I'm checking on. And you guys are taking out, you're moving some of the stuff, the plant's in at dusk.
Correct. That's what that anything that's outdoors and seasonal like that would be brought in after dusk.
Do you think the firewood is going to go? I can see on page 8, you can kind of see the Blue Rhino thing right there, which is right there. You just missed. You moved it. Go back to where you were.
Right here.
Yeah, if you can circle that, Amy. That to me is going to be Blue Rhino.
Correct.
Okay. Then the firewood's going to go under one of those 2 windows, maybe?
That's, I think, the likely location.
Okay.
Just because it's the least, likely, we don't want to obviously block parking or make the area inaccessible for anyone entering the site, in a wheelchair or otherwise disabled. So we would make sure that that's done in a, in a location that would not block disabled parking accessibility.
Okay, that's fine. I just James is designing a really nice, pretty building specific to Darien. I just want to make sure everybody knows that the blue rhino thing's gonna be around the back, so you can't see it and block his pretty building, and the firewood's gonna be to the left of the front door and be underneath those windows.
And this is James from HFA. There's 3 double hungs on the left.
Yep.
Those are both fake windows as well. So all the double hungs, thank you, Amy. Those double hungs are fake. And it's the glazing that's between the entrance under the gable. Those are true visibility.
All right, then, okay, then someone's got to start, somehow or other, we got to bring in the fishbowl effect in Tommy. So when you're done, James, that's fine. You want to keep going, you're more than welcome to. With regards to the canopy and the lighting, it's been said a couple times, we want those lights recessed in the canopy. I have pictures of the one that I saw in New Jersey 2 weeks ago. There are no hanging lights like that's up at exit 25 at Cumberland Farms, so that's good. Are you going to give us a what do we call a lumen study? What do we call it? Photometric plan?
There is a photometric plan in the initial submission. I think we went through it briefly during the original presentation back in September. If there are specific questions, Jim Bernardino is available to answer, anything about the canopy lighting. We certainly knew that you were interested in that.
But there's been so many changes, so is that still?
We changed the roof of the canopy, but we didn't change the underside and the lighting.
Let me add that Jim Bernardino with Bowler Engineering. With this latest submission, an updated lighting plan was included. We took a look or tried to address your concerns. We worked with 7-Eleven's lighting vendor, Cree Lighting, to specify some lighting under the canopy that is flush mounted with the canopy that did not hang down. It's not necessarily recessed up inside of the canopy. When you do recess inside the canopy, you tend to have spotlight effect coming down without any uniform light distribution underneath the canopy. But however, we were able to look and specify a light fixture that is flush with the undermount. It's an LED light. We've also modified that fixture and provided somewhat softer lighting underneath the canopy. So the lights intensities were almost cut in half from the original proposal. So underneath the lighting canopy, we're in the range of about 30-foot candles average, plus or minus.
I'm sorry, is that in your plans that are dated, that are revised for lighting? What's the date of this thing? November 13th?
Yep, November 13th. There's two sheets, 703 and 704. 704 actually provides cut sheets of the individual light fixtures proposed on the site. If you look,
that, I apologize. Okay.
So if you look at 704, the far light fixture on the far left is called the 304 series. That's the light fixture that's under the canopy, and that will be flush on the underside of the canopy.
Okay. All right, that's fine. And so the lumen study that came in the initial submission, that hasn't changed with the new lights and the new flush panels?
It has changed. The intensities actually were decreased quite a bit underneath the canopies. So we actually provide a less intense lighting scenario underneath the canopy. Before we had peak lighting foot candles in the range of almost 60. Now we're at 35, 36 max with an average.
So are we getting that new lighting plan study, the new lumen study for that?
Mr. Chairman, it's Amy Suchins. I'm trying to pull it up right now. It's in your site plan submission that was submitted last week.
Yep. Sheets.
He just said he changed it.
Right from the original August submission.
You said September.
All right, so now this is dated, I mean, I don't mean to jump around, but we're talking about the same thing. This is dated November 13th. So last week would have been November 13th. So we got the Lumen study that matches what James is talking about. I mean, what the Boiler Engineering guys talking about right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the one that was originally either submitted in August or September, nobody really cares. Because that's old.
Yeah, that's old. We've modified some of the fixtures to address some of the initial comments that we received from the commission. So latest and greatest is what was received by the commission dated the 13th of November.
Okay, we got that. I just don't have it in my hands.
I just pulled it up if there were specific questions, but as Jim said, it's like the lighting plan is C703.
I'm just trying to make sure that, I mean, the plans that James has given us with the canopy is the 18th, and then the top part of the canopy changed, but the bottom part changed on the 13th, and so what James said on the top doesn't affect what the Boiler Engineering guys doing on the bottom. Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct. The overall underneath the canopy is a big rectangle when you're looking at from the bottom up, and that has not changed.
And I'm only asking this because of what was said about the internal floor plan. This is not a generic plan, correct? The outdoor lighting and outdoor canopy. This is a specific plan specific to this site that is anticipated to be installed at this site, correct?
That is correct. We have make, model, part numbers on the plan.
Awesome, thank you. I just want to clarify that because hearing that the internal site plan and the internal floor plan is a generic plan kind of now has me a little bit confused. And so I just want to keep clarifying what's specific and what's generic and what is actually go forward and or intended to go forward. So I appreciate you clarifying that.
Mr. Chairman, could I make two quick inquiries?
Sure, yeah, I was just gonna double check, make sure James is good, and then open up to the rest of the commissioners to go ahead. So James, you good before George speaks?
Again, James with HBA. I'm good on presenting the architecture unless there's any, I'm happy to open it up to the board to address any questions that they have, but I'm good.
Go ahead, George, you're up.
Back on that subject, for Attorney Suchins, I guess, is there an opportunity to have these new elevations reviewed by the Architectural Review Board?
We could discuss it, but it was clear to us, and frankly, we had given them, as outlined in the presentation, an earlier version of this, and there was just conflicting opinions among the board members about what was best for the site. Frankly, there were some that preferred a much more contemporary building. There were some that liked dormers, others hated dormers. So like I said, we had a rather lengthy discussion with the staff about whether it would be productive to go back to the ARB. If that's your direction, we would certainly take it under advisement, but I think given where we left off and if your staff wanted to give you any additional feedback, we're obviously welcome. But I think ultimately there was just not consensus about how we should move forward with the design.
Jeremy's gonna chime in on that one, George.
Did staff tell you not to go back to ARB?
Let Jeremy's gonna answer.
Okay, good.
I can, what Amy explained earlier was absolutely correct. There were 2 meetings with the Architectural Review Board with a number of differing opinions. So certainly after the second meeting, the ARB chairman, Liz Geiger, sent a letter. You have a copy of that letter. After Amy and her team received that letter, they did make one more overture to staff in terms of some concepts and ideas which they believed were responsive to some of the ARB concepts in the letter. After forwarding those on informally to both staff and the ARB chairman, it became quite apparent to us that it would not be productive to go back to ARB. And thus Amy is here tonight to show you their current design.
So you've informally shared this current design with at least the chair of ARB?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so one other question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, as to the canopy. Is there any plan to have the name of the fuel provider shown anywhere? I know I'm tipping my toe into signage, but seems unusual not to indicate BP or Exxon or something.
It's not allowed under your regulations, so there is no signage proposed on the canopy.
And even on the monument thing I see out front?
Correct.
Yes,
The only signage would be on the proposal. The renderings are accurate with respect to the current signage. It's the monument sign, and then as you can see here, just based on this one, the 7-Eleven would be the wall sign. These are interior window signs that we believe are allowed. So there's nothing on the canopy. There's nothing other than the monument and the wall on the sort of Boston Post Road side of the property. We're not allowed by regulation to have anything facing I-95. The renderings obviously a little, the landscaping on the 95 side is a bit denser than shown in the rendering, but certainly, like I said, under your regulations, we're not allowed to have signs visible from I-95.
Okay, I have one more question for the architect/engineer, but I want to let Larry Warble speak if he wants to, or Jim Rand. Do you two gentlemen have any questions?
This is Larry. I'll go first.
Go ahead, Larry.
I'm just looking at the and I pulled up the site plan of the posters to make sure I got it correct. But just here, I'll hold it up. The page with the sort of the graphic view of the site.
They're all numbered on the bottom right, Larry.
It's page 10.
Okay.
And then I am looking at. I've scrolled away. But my basic question is, I'm just going back to what we spoke about in the first meeting on the plantings that you'll have. I just want to make sure that the trees and the bushes you've got rendered in here are what you're planning on putting in. And they're just sort of like, are they just sort of a little photoshopping here, or is that this actual part of the planting, the garden plan, if you will?
Sure. James, I think you can talk to the rendering, but more importantly, there is a landscaping plan that was updated based on some preliminary comments from the ARB. They were updating their street tree and other planting layouts, made some preliminary comments. So the landscaping plan that's included in the site plans that we provided, same set as the lighting, that is updated based on those preliminary ARB comments.
So I'm looking at, is it 601? Is that the correct one now? Is that the where we are today? Or I see one tree on 601 now, and now I'm seeing C701. There's 3 trees.
701's the current one, Larry.
701's
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to answer that question.
No. Yeah, this is just showing 701. So you got to go by 701.
And that correlates to page 10.
10 is
so
just
701 and 10 are the same, or they don't? They look, well, I'll just ask the question. Someone can walk me through them.
James, are you able to talk about which landscape plan you had used for the rendering?
James from HFA. I will defer and say that the rendering is a graphic representation, and any technical criteria for the landscaping is identified on the landscape plan developed by the landscape architect. And I'll defer to Jim Bernardino to correctly identify what the latest submission is. Again, the rendering was for aesthetic and artistic license. I don't want to misconstrued. The landscape plan is the technical submission, and that was the disclaimer indicated on the rendering as well. So, Jim Bernardino, if you could address that.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Thank you, James. Jim Bernardino. Yes, my team, Bowler Engineering, did work with James's team, HFA, to evaluate and try to best represent the intent of the landscaping plan, which is sheet 701, onto his architectural rendering perspectives. Obviously, every plant species, size of trees, shape are different. So we worked with HFA so that they could develop the rendering perspective to the greatest extent that we believe the overall landscaping plan would look like, after implementation. But at the end of the day, the final make, species, spacing, and locations of the landscape plan are reflected on the current sheet 701, which is the landscaping plan.
And maybe I'm just going to ask you to kind of describe it a little bit. And obviously, there's a lot of people who've dialed into this call, this meeting, who maybe are very interested and don't have that plan in front of them rather. But would you describe the trees that you're going to be putting in as representative of what's in this artistic rendering? Do they look quite similar? I see the rendering has two in front. I see on the plan something that looks a little bit more like three, with one kind of being on the corner. So maybe there's two, and then a third would have been sort of just to the left. Is that kind of consistent with what people should expect, or maybe just give it in English, if you will? Yeah,
the representation on the rendering is what people can typically expect. There is four trees, shade trees, that'll be across the front of the property. One directly in front of the building itself, and then three spread over where the Boston Post Road splits and goes off to the entrance to I-95. So there'll be three trees proposed along the frontage there. There's going to be several shrub plantings, evergreen and deciduous, as well as perennials that are going to flank either side of the driveway entrance, for aesthetics, as well as a long contiguous landscape bed that'll, connect the three shade trees that'll be along the frontage, as I mentioned, from the northern portion of the driveway extending northward towards the I-95 exit ramp. That in a nutshell.
I know we've covered this before. The wooded area that would be just to the left of the land is owned by the DOT. So all those trees that, when people are getting off at exit 13, they'll all still be there too, correct?
That's correct. DOT has asked us to make a minor adjustment to their pipe out there. Right now, there's an existing drain pipe that just charges off to the site. So we're going to be modifying that slightly. So there'll be a couple of select trees to be removed on that, but there will be no broad brush of tree removal in that area. The intent is to keep all the vegetation off that site between the entrance ramp and the property.
And then I just want to ask, because it's just not legible to me on the lighting plan. Can you, where do you reach zero on this? Is that reaching zero on the spillage when you reach the street, or is it? I just can't read the numbers. I'm just.
Yeah, I have a PDF open. Right along the gutter line of the road, we are at a 0 to a 0.1 level along the road. We're at the driveway entrance, which basically that is the intensities from the site. There is an existing street light right at the entrance, so obviously there will be illumination from the existing street light pole infrastructure out in Derry, right along Boston Post Road. So the light intensities there will not be zero because there's obviously ambient light and existing lights for the roadway. But the intent is to have it almost zero, assuming no other off premises light sources. So we're in the 0 to 0.1 range, 0.2 range right at the driveway, which we like to keep some level at entrances because of just entrances, safety concerns and the like.
Yeah, and you know what, I have it, I was able to pull it up. I can see it much clearer now. This is 703 that we're looking at. Is that correct?
Yes. Can you, I'm not sure if you can see my screen. I tried to zoom in. Given the number of people, you may not be able to see, but it's in fact 703, and I can zoom in further. But as you can see, as Jim's talking about along, there was a few spots right at the entrance, as he says, but as we reach the property line where I'm circling, these are all, 0 or 0.1s.
Yep, thanks, Amy. And in fact, I was able to pull up 703 from the town website, and it's much clearer here. Amy, well, since you've got the cursor, could you just circle around where any lighting will be that's not in the canopy? So obviously we know there's lighting in the canopy. Then any other any light posts that are going to be on the property. Just where they are location wise.
Sure. Jim, just direct me. I believe there are.
I think there's 4 or 5. What I'll do is, Amy, just pretend you're driving into the site. You're going to take a left-hand turn.
Yep.
There's going to be a light pole. You see a little square when you come into the site.
Right here?
I don't see your cursor moving, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't see your cursor.
Hold on, let me zoom in, see if it helps.
You got no movement.
And actually, I haven't seen yours refreshed to anything zooming either.
Oh, hold on a second, and let me stop and reshare again. Are you able to see the lighting plan?
Yep, we can see.
Okay. My cursor? No.
Well, I'll give a description because you can see very faint square marks. So when you first come into the site, right on the right-hand corner, there's a little square right there. There's a light fixture there that illuminates the entrance drive and some of the parking stalls. You can see the label that's XSPBLG.
Yep.
That's one light fixture. When you come into the site, take a left towards, there's another light fixture right there, just off the curb. It's labeled again, XSPLG. Now that's obviously facing towards the site. Going around in the back of the site, about 4 parking spots in, there's another one. Then there's another one right over the canopy. I mean, not the canopy, I apologize, the UST, the underground storage tanks.
Yeah, I've got them now, yep. I can see the rest moving along.
And then there's one in the loading area.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the loading area? I'm sorry.
Just plan north of the hatched area. If you see the transformer, they got a light pole in proximity of the transformer.
Okay.
Right, I think easily identified as you move around the site with that XSP.
Yeah, that's helped clarify it tremendously. And maybe just spend a quick moment in kind of easy to understand language about how these, the intensity of these lights, the direction, are they very focused? Does lights, how do you control light spillage? People looking at someone who may be living across the street, and
yes.
I think you understand the question I'm asking.
Yes. The light fixtures for the site obviously are oriented, towards the parking area, but we understand that obviously there's concern with spillage sideways, backwards. They are fitted with particular housing to direct flow or direct light towards the intended area. So I don't want to say throwing it forward, but blocking it from going backwards. There is some spillage to the rear. That's why we do the photometric plan. But they have also have, in addition to the housing that is the light fixtures encapsulated in, there's also different types of distribution that you're able to set these light fixtures up for. Meaning you could have light fixtures that will focus intensity down in a circle, or you could have the same fixture focus its intensity outward in a semicircle arc. So we've coordinated with the light vendor to have those types of distribution to obviously provide the greatest extent coverage in the parking area while protecting light spillage off to the abutters.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of lighting on the building, I imagine, I know, well, you know, you're gonna have some kind of a spotlight on your 7-Eleven sign. Would you have something which is similar to the way Dutchess has it today, I believe? Will there be other lights, just any other lights that are on the property that
Yes,
we should
okay.
do?
Yes, so there will be lights in the building. There is, I believe, 4 lights that will be mounted on the building, 2 in the front. Those are labeled as the XSPWs, which are going to be 11 feet high. So there'll be 2 in the eastern building and then 2 on the front of the building as well. Those are going to be a typical wall-mounted fixture with lighting directed down to illuminate the walkway paths along the front of the building. Those cut sheets are also provided on sheet 704 for a visual representation of that. If you're looking at sheet 704, the detail cut sheet on the far right of the sheet called XSP series, that is the fixture that is proposed for the building lighting. And those are going to be mounted, I believe, at 11 or 12 feet on the building.
All right. I don't have anything else.
Jim Rand, we haven't heard from you yet. I don't think we heard from Jennifer too much yet. And then we can always go back to Kara. Jim Rand, you have anything at this point?
Hang on a second. Couldn't find a button. No, I have no questions with regard to this area. Thanks.
Okay.
I have 2
Is that Jen? You want to go,
Yeah.
Jen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just to make sure I'm clear on this, the lines in front of the building are all parking spots, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the last 1, 2, 3, 4 parking spots are in front of a loading area where there could be a truck there and there's no sidewalk. Am I correct in seeing that?
You are correct, yes.
So if there's a truck there and you're getting out of your car, where are you walking? Behind the other cars to get through the front, and that the diagonal line delineates the sidewalk that's sort of in between that front entranceway? I just want to clarify for everyone.
Certainly, yes. Obviously, that is an option to walk behind the cars. But the intent is the loading area that we have is relatively vast. The depth of that is 40 to over 50 feet. I don't have the exact dimension, but the intent is to still have concrete area, even though it's a loading zone. There still be concrete area, and there should be an adequate room for pedestrians to walk in front of their cars to the dedicated sidewalk.
Okay, so I am seeing it right. So those 4 cars, if you're walking or getting out of your car with a kid or whatever, you're either walking behind other cars or you're walking into a loading area that could have a truck actively in that driveway. And there's not a sidewalk that is specifically dedicated to those 4 cars.
No, there is not.
Okay, good. And then I have one more question. So the windows, because now I understand the inside is not what's there. We're not looking at that anymore. But the outside, I'm a little confused because the double hung windows are real windows or they're not real windows?
This is James with HFA. So again, to be consistent with the feedback we heard from the Architectural Review Board, we've provided authentic, so real double hung windows, but the glass will be blocked out.
So it's just like I get materials and it says on my page 16, double hung windows, they're Anderson, right? There were Anderson windows and narrow profile lets in more light. So before this, right, this is new news. So basically I have the front of the building with where it says 7-Eleven and Ruth, those are light, they're allowing light to go through them. The rest of them, despite what I have in my packet, it is not to allow more light in.
That's correct.
Okay, so page 16, when we're looking at the 4 bullet points, number 3, narrow profiles let in more light. That is not correct. So we should have the public know there's not more light that are going to be coming through any of the lights except the front of the building. Is that correct now? So we have the 1 pane on the right, and then we have the doors with the 2 rectangles, and then we have the 3 windows to the left, which are all allowing light through. So all of those are light through. I just want to be clear.
Again, this is James with HFA. I think as Amy pointed out before, those double hung windows, those are blocked out. So that's correct. Light will not go through those. But in keeping with the feedback we received from the ARB and in the design guidelines, they're authentic. They're real windows, but they're blocked out. So they will not receive, you won't allow light to go through.
Or visibility from the inside or vice versa, from the outside to the inside.
Correct that. That's typically what happens in that scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question? So if windows are blacked out to not let light in, and you made them double hung to appease ARB, but then you said they were so inconsistent, we don't really care what they say. Can police or security see inside these blacked out windows that can't allow light in? Can visibility is there visibility into the inside with the blacked out windows?
This is James from HFA. I just want to correct you there.
Yeah.
It's not that we didn't listen to the ARB and throw what they said. We absolutely listened and heard the concerns, and we've tried to address all of their concerns the best we could.
Answer my question.
And so, what is the question again specifically?
My question is, you added the double hung windows, but blacked them out so that most people, when they have double hung windows, they have them to allow light and air in. So you have the double hung windows, but they're blacked out, and that light will not be coming into the inside, the interior of the building. My question is, will the blacking out of the windows also impact visibility from the inside externally and from external inside the building? Or will the blacking out have no impact other than light?
Again, this is James from HFA. When windows are blacked out, typically you cannot see through them, and that's the case here.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is James from HFA. The reason for the blacked out windows, the faux windows as we're calling them, again, based on the feedback and discussion with the ARB, we wanted to create architectural character and interest. On earlier submissions, we did not have a lot of the faux windows, and so this was a way to address those.
Did ARB ask you to black out windows?
Again, this is James from HFA. So again, in the discussions with ARB, we discussed several ways to articulate that elevation, with the windows being one of those solutions.
It's a pretty easy question. Did ARB ask you to black out the windows?
Mrs. Gately, with all due respect, he is trying to answer your question, and he's giving you what the direction was from ARB. So if you let him answer,
Ask him to black out the windows, or ask 7-Eleven to black out the windows.
the ARB asked us to add visual interest to the building.
That's not what I asked.
Correct, and the design choice that was made was to add the windows for visual interest, but because they will likely access areas that are not, they be in front of a refrigerator, the decision was that it would be a better choice to have those blacked out rather than have a view into a storage area.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Sugins. Again, to the architect, did ARB ask you to black out the windows?
Mrs. Gately, we've answered the question.
Oh, no one has answered the question, actually.
Then I'll defer to the chairman and ask him to make a decision about whether we should continue talking about this or move on.
Yeah, they're blacked out. You can't see through them.
I know, but he was saying it was based on sort of direction from ARB, and my question was, did ARB ask them to black out the windows?
No, they didn't. ARB threw everything out.
I don't know why they just wouldn't answer that question. It's just a point of clarification I was asking. I was seeking. I don't know why it got so contentious. A little strange.
Amy, I think we heard from all the commissioners. Amy, let me just ask one more texture on the architecture. And I hate to pick on this stuff, but there's also an ice machine blocking one of your windows, James. Is that what's correct in the site plan? It shows up on page number, shows up on page number 3, I think, in here. Yeah, it shows up on page number 4 in your book, and it's on plan 301. So that ice machine's going to be in front of the double hung windows to the right.
Sure, this is James from HVA. Great observation. The intent is that no equipment blocks the clear window. So if we need to move that ice machine, ice dispenser, we'll make sure that it's not blocking the clear windows.
So I get it. It's not blocking the clear windows. It's blocking the blacked out windows that we just talked about. I just want to make sure that in front of the store, on the blue Rhino propane tanks are around the side, and the firewoods under the triple double hung windows to the left of the front door, and the ice machine is to the blocking your blacked out windows to the right of the front door. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. That's all.
So is the question to confirm the location of the ice machine?
Yes.
Okay, the ice machine shown on the plans, yes, that.
Okay, it's next to the garbage can. It's to the right of the garbage can on that picture where Amy is right now. Yeah, it's to the right of the garbage. Okay. So we got that done. I think James is done. I think all the commissions are heard for. Amy, before we go to the general public, and I really want to get to the general public because I think we have 4 speakers that want to speak tonight. But I want you to address your memo specifically to fishbowl design and security. But do you want to do that after we hear from speakers, or you want to do it now? Because I got a bunch of questions on that.
I think it would probably make sense to let Tom address that now while we're talking about the building, having everybody, gotten familiar with the layout of the building and the comments. I think it makes sense to do it now.
All right, then let me throw another question at you. You can pick who you're going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We asked you to give us delivery times. And in your memo, I don't think it's a typo, but it says, it agrees that all deliveries shall be made between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. That's basically all day?
Right, that we would agree to no what we would consider late night deliveries, so it wouldn't be any impact. And then the other thing is that as a corporate owned store, there would be no deliveries during what we deem to be the peak hour of operations. So generally 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. There would likely be no, or the effort would be made to make no deliveries during that time, because that's when the site is busiest. And so the need is to have employees not stocking or dealing with deliveries, but rather working with customers.
Okay, so the memo says 7-Eleven agrees that all deliveries shall be made between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. unless conditions about storms and whatnot. 7-Eleven endeavors to avoid morning and evening peak delivery hours, which is, we should just define that, which is gonna be, you said it's like 6 to 9 or something like that?
7 to 9, 4 to 6.
7 to 9 in the morning. This is 7 to 9 in the morning, 7 to 9. And then in the evening, it's, you say it's 4 to 6?
Correct.
4 to 6 p.m. Okay. Now, with that said, going back to Jen's question with regards to those 4 parking spaces blocking the loading dock area.
Yes.
Right? So if you're going to have deliveries between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. and then in the middle of the day around lunchtime, and then you're going to have deliveries between 4 and 6, then that truck loading area with your, I think it says like 50 trucks, 5 to 10 truck deliveries per week. That means those 4 parking spaces are always going to be conflicted.
It's a problem.
Right. So generally, as we noted in the memo, 10 to 15 box truck type deliveries during the week. So that averages out approximately 2 a day. And based on 7-Eleven's expectation, this site is, I wouldn't quite say overparked, but it's very comfortably parked for what 7-Eleven believes would be the customer demand based on what their experience is. So we don't see any conflict, because we don't think that in the total hours in which there would be a delivery in that space, that there would be a demand for those couple of parking spaces in the event that there's a truck there. We think there's enough parking, even if there was a truck here for 15 minutes or a half an hour unloading at an off hour, there's sufficient parking on the site for customers.
But that's not even.
That's according to what you think. That's kind of what you think, but the regs say you have to have 22. You're providing 24, so you only have 2 swing ones, and you're knocking out 4 of them by having Jen's kids walk around those cars when they're parked there. So
And
you see what the
besides that,
conflict is?
there's a truck waiting. I'm parked there. I'm trying to put my kid in the car, and now there's a truck waiting. So they're blocking all the other cars that are parked there. And I know you need those 4 spots, but I can't wrap my head around who's going to be more annoyed, me with my kid or the truck driver who needs to make his next delivery and is going to get docked because he's late. So I don't know. Anyway, I think we should move to public comment personally.
Steve, may I?
That's good, Jim.
I don't want to cut Jen off. I just want to ask a question when she's done.
Right. So that was actually going to be my question, is there a specific question? Because if the issue is that there's somebody parked here, as Jim Bernardino noted in the last hearing, if there was a delivery truck who couldn't access, the expectation would be that the delivery truck would wait over here. There's sufficient space between the fuel canopy and the edge of pavement for a truck to not block access to the pumps or and wait in the event that there are cars parked there when a delivery truck arrives.
Okay, so that's your position, that there's a spot for the truck to hang out.
Correct. That this area adjacent to the canopy provides sufficient space. If in a couple of minutes that somebody might be loading or unloading, where there's assuming there's a car parked here, that they would need to access the delivery area.
Okay. If that's your position, that's your position. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that could be your position. That's fine.
Steve?
Yes, Jim.
In the memorandum on this sort of same subject,
Yep.
we spent earlier hearings some amount of time discussing parking and trucks and deliveries and so on and so forth. And there's a statement in the memorandum saying 7-Eleven anticipates fuel deliveries to be no more than the average number of deliveries of the other gas stations in the area.
Yeah, I was going to get to that next.
What is the deliveries, the average number of deliveries of the other gas stations in the area?
Our understanding is that the general area has anywhere between 2 to 4 deliveries a week, and we expect to be in the same range.
Can we drill down that in our meeting in January? I'd really keep that one for January.
All right, we can keep that one for January.
Is there a specific question about?
Is that from a standard tech, like a standard industry?
Yeah, we got to get the public comment.
Or is that actually based on area gas stations and service stations and what their average deliveries are?
Correct.
And
So
what time frame? COVID time frame, anticipated time frame of 2022, or based on 2019 pre-COVID with state of Connecticut DOT sort of input into how to extrapolate what anticipated volumes would be?
Right, so it's based on certainly a non-COVID situation, what we would have expected, call it last year, what our standard is. And tankers that deliver fuel have a certain capacity, and we have an understanding of what the general capacity and volumes are in the area, and we expect to be in the same range. So
let's table that till January, and then we'll see if we get to the general public now.
All right.
We're starting to run late. That's all.
Okay.
In terms of the general public, if you can open up microphones, Fred is the first speaker. We're going to have Attorney Wilder Gleason speak. He sent in a letter, and I think he represents a number of houses along Birch Road. Wilder, are you on board with us, sir? Mr. Gleason? Fred, is he unmuted? Do you see him?
I'm unmuted. I need to raise my screen.
I just stopped sharing.
You good? You okay, Amy?
I am. It should stop. I should have stopped sharing at this point, so Wilder should be able to access the screen sharing.
His WG is right above your head on my screen.
Wilder,
Everybody-
hold on. I just have to find you on this list here.
Oh, you gotta find Wilder on the list, Fred? Unmute him? Oh, no, you're gonna add him to be screen sharing. Why don't you introduce yourself, Wilder, while that goes? So there's Wilder. Hey, buddy.
I'm Wilder Gleason. I'm an attorney in Darien with Wilder Gleason Law, and I represent a consortium of members of neighbors on Birch Road and neighboring streets, as well as 320 BPR Holdings LLC, which is the abutting neighbor on the west side, the office building. So let me
Thank you.
just,
Welcome.
okay, and
Nick Fletcher, who is one of the principals of BPR Associates Holding, did speak once before, Wilder, just so you know.
I understood that, yes.
Okay.
Wilder, maximize the window on your screen.
And just for edification, Fred, the next person I think we're gonna have to speak, and if you could be on deck, would be Terry Bach, I'm sorry, who also lives on Birch Road. So Terry, if you have to do whatever you gotta do to get ready, you're up next.
All right, great. 7-Eleven Inc. is a national company with numerous stores in New York, Virginia, Texas, and many other states. A quick view of the locations on its website shows that stores are generally located either in an urban area, such as a city, or just off a major highway, such as I-95. We understand that evidence in this hearing indicates that the 7-Eleven mobile app has been downloaded 22 million times, so users can easily locate a 7-Eleven for cheap gas while on a highway. Catering to the traveling public on I-95, not residents of the Darien community, appears to be the applicant's primary objective here. That is clear from several things that we know. The 7-Eleven application to the ZBA is to vary a pole sign regulation from a total of 30 square feet allowed to 48 square feet. And Planning and Zoning just completed a comprehensive review and revision of the sign regulations in September 2018. There is no hardship to justify the adjustments 7-Eleven seeks in its variance application. The ARB, as we know, has issued an unfavorable decision. They're now coming to you apparently because ARB could not build a plurality or consensus. And the pending application that we have, in this application, 7-Eleven seeks to amend the regulations. They want your help to allow them to do what they want on the site. They're actually proposing 3 uses on a single site, each of which would ordinarily be considered a principal or primary use, and each of which requires special permit approval pursuant to section 1000 et sec. And namely what they're doing, they're asking for a gas service station use, which is permitted in the zone by special permit after the Zoning Board of Appeals approves its location. They're asking for a 4,000 square foot retail store. And they sell food, groceries, everything in this store, according to testimony tonight. And they're asking for a quick service restaurant with 100 square feet of indoor space devoted to customer tables or seating when 1,200 square feet is required. This is a summary of what I just said, but we believe the Planning and Zoning Commission should deny this application because the regulation changes they seek are inconsistent with the town plan of conservation and development. The application uses are not consistent with the intent of the service business regulations, section 750 et sec, which you amended in August of last year. And they seek to substantially modify those. Here it is, they filed this in September, just over a year after you had spent months doing a comprehensive review and consolidating the Service Business East regulations and the other service business regulations into one set affecting the service business zones. So as I've indicated, they proposed 3 special principal uses when I think the regulations allow only 1. By definition, the principal use is the dominant or essential use, primary use, and they're proposing 3: the gas service station, the retail store, which we under Darien zoning regulations call commercial sales and service. And this would be a commercial sales and service use that does not include exterior storage or activities, and a quick service restaurant with 100 square feet of customer table seating when section 753D requires 1,200 square feet. So the quick service restaurant under the current zoning regulations must be a principal use, not an accessory use, as the applicant is proposing that you modify the regs to allow it as an accessory use. I have a copy of the plan of conservation and development, which is dated 2015, and I've highlighted various sections of it. The first section is section 4, which is entitled Maintain and Enhance the Residential Character. This is page 36 of the POCD. And there's a vision statement that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen that indicates that, quote, Darien continues to be primarily a New England style, single-family dwelling community. This sentiment was echoed by others in the community as well. And as interpreted in the past, this does not mean exclusively single-family dwelling character. However, it does mean that building design and scale, which are harmonious with this vision statement, will be more consistent with community objectives. I then turn to page 42 of the Plan of Conservation and Development, which is still section 4. And it's important that buildings that do not reflect established scale and style of local architecture negatively affect community character. And Darien will maintain a design review process to ensure that buildings and sites contribute to overall community character. They have followed that process apparently. Section 10 of the Plan of Conservation and Development at page 98 talks about maintaining the residential character of the town is a key element of this plan. Darien's zoning approach will continue to recognize the prevailing development pattern of predominantly single-family development. And to maintain the residential character, you've adopted policies in the Plan of Conservation Development. Number 1 talks about continuing to maintain the character of Darien as a residential community, which is primarily comprised of lower density, single-family neighborhoods, which is exactly what my clients live in, a single-family neighborhood abutting the Post Road that can be directly affected by this proposal. It is important under section, the policy number 4, that the Planning and Zoning Commission continue careful monitoring of land uses in and near residential areas to minimize impact on surrounding residential properties. And you see the leader of this is this commission under this table. So it's up to you to make sure that to monitor land uses in and near residential areas to minimize impact on those residential neighborhoods. Section 11 is entitled The Guide to Business and Economic Development, and this is page 108 of the plan. The range of principal and accessory uses allowed in the business district seems reasonable and appropriate. This is a finding you made 5 years ago. We have sufficient principal and accessory uses already. It doesn't appear necessary to add more as they're suggesting. The accessory use of a quick serve restaurant is not necessary. So continuing on with the highlighted provision, the uses which are only allowed by special use permit could have impacts on other uses, and so the level of review which occurs as part of the special use process is necessary and reasonable. And then you quoted the 2006 plan, that the amount of commercial property in Darien is quite limited, and there is a desire for the community to have a mix of zones and not be entirely residentially zoned. While Darien is and should remain primarily a residential community, the quality of residential life in such a community is enhanced by well-planned commercial and other support uses within the town. Now that's support of the community, not support of 7-Eleven's desire to bring I-95 travelers to its strategically located gas station, retail store, and quick service restaurant. So under the policies you have there is the Planning and Zoning Commission is the leader in carefully reviewing any proposal to rezone existing commercial properties for other uses. This is your baby, commissioners. It's up to you to carefully review it. And as the plan says, we already have a range of principal and accessory uses that is reasonable and appropriate. There is no compelling need for you to make the changes they're requesting. And as a legislative body acting on applications to change the regulations, you have a pretty free rein to accept or deny them on the basis of whether it's consistent with the town plan of development. And my suggestion is that these changes that they're asking, most of them that are most impactful, are absolutely not supported by the language in the town plan. I then turn to section 11, page 112, and this is the policies for managing business development as well as action steps, which you said the commission should be performing going forward. Policy number 1 says keep future commercial development consistent with the existing small town New England character of Darien. You're the leader on that. Continue to enhance the design of buildings and sites through the design review process. ARB is the lead, you're a partner. And at this point, you're the leader. Enhance the function of the roadway through access management of business areas. This is critical in reviewing this application. There's evidence, I believe, that 7-Eleven will pump over 250,000 gallons of gas a month with the average fill up of about 10 gallons. That's 25,000 new vehicles in Darien coming largely off of I-95 exit 13, turning left on the post road to go eastbound, crossing to go westbound on Route 1, crossing 2 lanes of traffic going eastbound on Route 1, entering a median strip, which allows 1 car, and if you have 2 cars backed up, the rear of one of the cars is in the traveled lane of the left eastbound Route 1 lane. They then have to enter, going westbound on Route 1, a left turn, which is the most difficult turning movement, and then go down. They're in, I believe, they then have to go down to the end of the median strip and make a left to enter the site. And with 250,000 gallons a month, with an average fill-up of 10 gallons, that's 25,000 vehicles. And that's 2 trips, 1 into the site and 1 out. Average 1,000 a day, 800 a day, whatever it is. It's a lot of cars. And there's 2 left turns for those vehicles coming off I-95 to get into the site. So this is a critical issue as you analyze this. And my clients wish this application to be continued so they may engage a traffic engineer to review the report of the applicant and the town's peer review and contribute his views or her views on this application. The other part of the plan is section 6 of the policy, seek to limit business impacts and intrusion on adjacent residential properties and streets. That's your baby. You're the leaders in this. The action steps that you've already done are section 8 to talk about looking at whether commercial sales and service in service business zones require external storage or activity. You made major changes, consolidated the different SB zone regulations in 2019. It was August of 2019 that you did this. And the applicant, essentially a year later, is asking you to modify them for their benefit. I think you ought to live with the regs the way they are and not change them. You also committed to undertaking a comprehensive review and revision of the signage regulations. You did that. My note is incorrect. It wasn't 2019, it was 2018. And the applicant doesn't find those regulations, which were recently updated and substantially revised, to be adequate for their use. Section 750 is the revised service business zone regs and its subsequent amendments. You'll see this was added and amended August 11, 2019. And the preamble, which is section 751, establishes the intent and objective of this zone, which is intended to provide in appropriate areas for certain types of business uses which serve a community need or convenience. It's a business use which serves a community need or convenience. That's intended primarily for Darien community. The intention is to preserve and protect existing SB districts for continued provision of such services in a manner which will not be detrimental to surrounding residential areas. You see this throughout the plan of conservation and development, and now in your regulations. The uses cannot be detrimental to the surrounding residential areas. Another note later on is highlighted, this zone may allow commercial sales and service uses via special permit if certain requirements and standards are met. I submit this application fails to meet those standards, and I'll demonstrate that later. So the commercial sales and service uses is essentially retail. Now, 752 allows as of right commercial sales and uses, service uses, which include external storage or activity. Now, the applicant may claim that we have outdoor display of goods and services, the propane tanks, the firewood and plants, and maybe they'll have, window washing and other things. There may be water outside. There may be ice sales, whatever it is. When I represented Whole Foods and we sought to go to their current location in downtown in 2007, this commission said Whole Foods was not a commercial sales and service use, which included external storage or activity. I listed the activities that Whole Foods had. Outdoor storage of shopping carts. The fact that customers needed the shopping carts outside to carry their groceries from the interior of the store to their cars. Outdoor display of merchandise. Whole Foods has an extensive display of goods and services, seasonal items, et cetera, just as this retail store proposes. Whole Foods also had food delivery trucks to customers that were going to be stored on site. They had outdoor dining proposed as part of their use. And yet, despite that extensive list of outdoor activities, the Planning and Zoning Commission rejected the application and said that this Whole Foods was a standard commercial sales and service use that did not include external storage activity. And we then had to come in and amend the regulations to allow Whole Foods to be there as a, and if you look at 753, these are principal uses requiring special permits in the SB zone, and Whole Foods was labeled a commercial sales and service use that did not require external storage and activity. And this use is only allowed pursuant to section 757G, and I'll get to that later. But if you know, there are three principal uses highlighted here because these are the three principal uses the applicant seeks to have you approve on a single site. The quick service restaurant that provides under the regs 1,200 square feet of indoor space that is devoted to customer tables and seating area, and the automotive services use, which is essentially a gas station. So I now turn to section 210, your definitions. An accessory use is a use which is customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use. It's not the principal uses. And a principal use is defined as the primary or principal use of any lot or building. A primary use is the first, the most important, the single dominant use. And an accessory use is incidental or subordinate to that use. This application is seeking approval of 3 primary uses on this site, which your regulations don't allow. Now, they want to modify the regulations. They want you to modify them to allow the quick service use to be 100 square feet and qualify as a accessory use. You have no obligation to do that. This is the definition in section 210 of a commercial sales and service use, which is essentially retail. It also includes financial service uses, and other uses that are defined shall not be considered part of this definition, such as a retail food store, which is a separate definition, but I won't get into that. 757 imposes special controls on applicants seeking business site plan approval in the SB zone, which includes the architectural style that's compatible with the adjoining residential area, and ARB approval of same, and the requirement that you receive a report prior to taking any action on it. It also details that automotive services are all subject to the provisions of 1056, which is a special regulation dealing with automotive service uses. And in 1056, an automotive service use is allowed as an accessory use by special permit, the sale of non-automobile related goods and items. And that's as an accessory, subordinate, incidental use to the gas service station, not as a primary use. And I submit that what they're proposing is a primary principal retail use, as well as a motor vehicle service gas station automotive use, which your regulations don't allow. Section 757G is what I would call the Whole Foods regulation, which was adopted to allow Whole Foods to occupy its site in 2007. See at the bottom of this slide. These uses, which are not involving external storage or activity, may be allowed pursuant to the standards for approval of a special permit, providing they meet the requirements, the following requirements. The property is served by public water and sewer. This site does that. But the property has to be 3 acres in size. This site is 1/3 of that. In addition, the commercial sales and service uses are only allowed if the property is within 1,000 feet of the central business district. This site is over 3,000 feet from the central business district. Under section 757G, the retail use they propose for this site is not allowed.
You good? You good?
Nope.
Brother?
I got a little more.
Because I don't mean to interrupt it off, but you said you asked for more time in your letter dated November 19th.
I did.
To delay the hearing because you want to get your consultant.
Yes.
So you definitely, if you heard at the beginning, we're going to send this at least, I think it goes to January is what I said at the beginning. So you can have more time then. I do want to get to some of the other speakers.
I mean,
I can finish.
Go way over. They're 40 minutes. So, I mean, he's here representing residents. So
Yeah.
I think.
I have 2 more slides.
Okay, bud. Thank you.
All right. So the applicant's own language in their proposed regulatory changes document that this is a retail store. If in their proposed changes to section 755 indicate that they want a quick service residence that has 100 square feet of indoor space shall be when located in a retail store co-located with a gas station. That retail store is my emphasis, but they're calling their own store a retail store. It's not an accessory use under their own language in this proposed regulatory change, sorry. You see the same thing with respect to section 904W, a new regulation they want you to adopt to give them a dispensation from the parking regulations that their proposed uses would require. And again, they're talking a retail store when it's, that it should be a retail store. And that again adds to the fact that this is a primary or principal use. It's a retail store plus a gas service station. So for the various reasons cited in this slide, you should deny it. The proposed regulation changes are not consistent with the plan. The regulation changes are contrary to the intent of the SB regulations and would allow uses detrimental to the abutting residential areas. The proposed uses in site plan signage are designed to serve travelers on I-95, not the local community. The retail commercial sales service use they're proposing is not allowed on the site. There's no reason to allow a quick service restaurant as an accessory use in the SB zone. And that's evident from the plan of conservation and development, which already indicated you've got adequate accessory and primary uses already, principal uses already defined. The gas service station use needs ZBA approval and does not meet the requirements for a special permit approval as the use. This use in this application cannot really be separated from the other proposed uses. If the retail store is not allowed, they don't need 4,000 square feet in their building. They could shrink it to something much more akin to the other gas stations that have a very small convenience store use that is, say, 500 square feet. That may not be what 7-Eleven wants, but it's not what the regulation, what they want is not allowed by the regulation. We also have concerns, as the applicant is well aware, about traffic, noise, lighting, crime, impact on the neighborhood, et cetera. We don't think those have been addressed appropriately. That's it.
Thank you, Wilder. Very informational.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Terry Bach. I think your microphone is unmuted, I hope.
Can you?
Good, Terry. Yep, good. Just state your name and your address for the record, sir.
Terrific. Terry Bach, 7 Birch Road. And candidly, I'm among the group of neighbors that Wilder represents as well. He's obviously closer to the issues than I am, and certainly I won't repeat them, A, because I'm not qualified, and B, because Jeremy and Steve asked me not to. So out of both, I'm delighted to do that. Very, very quickly, I'm certainly not going to repeat any of those arguments as they represent the core, but I do think there's a place for shining a little bit of a light on some of the areas that, namely in Wilder's last point, as it relates to the neighborhood. So as I mentioned, I'm at 7 Birch Road. That's the third house in on the Post Road. It is a very, very densely neighborhood with a lot of kids, including my own. There's 6 of us with my 4 kids, 2 daughters at Middlesex and 2 at the high school, as well as 2 dogs that certainly we never forget about. We've been there for 14 years, which, it's a very, very busy street. You should have been down there. It's an awful lot of kids and very, very close to this residential zone. I am amongst this group of citizens that's very concerned about this application, and as I mentioned, amongst the group that Mr. Gleason's represents. Really just wanted to shine a bright light on a few things that Wilder mentioned, but as it relates from the neighborhood perspective. The applicant has set forth in their application some shocking estimates for the business that they intend to drive there, specifically both the size of the store and the amount of gasoline they intend to sell. The success of this business depends really on 2 things. One, diverting a lot of cars off of I-95 at exit 13 and being open 24 hours, which frankly are the 2 main things that concern us deeply from the perspective of the neighborhood, which is safety, both the safety issues brought by the things that happen with 24-hour businesses, which I believe the police have said it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, as well as the major traffic issues, not just in terms of the additional traffic but it's already a bit of a strange area as well, with 4 lanes of width with only 2 lanes painted, where cars frequently go around the right side of cars making a left-hand turn. I think we're seeing over an accident a month in front of Trader Joe's. And, this is frankly that on steroids for if you've been in and around that corner frequently at all. And then lastly, this really just is a drastic change in the retail profile in this end of town, so close to a residential zone. And frankly, to us, in terms of all the things that Wilder said, in terms of the plan of conservation and development, 24 hours, obviously, the few experiments in Darien have not been terribly successful. And frankly, we're a little bit worried about a slippery slope a little bit in that regard. So for example, if there's a convenience store that's open 24 hours with 12 gas pumps and all this retail, if I'm Darien Diner, I think I'd like to be open 24 hours as well to take advantage of that, to take advantage of that additional traffic that's now coming off of I-95. And that's not a terribly big leap, because the owner of that diner owns other diners in Fairfield County that are open 24 hours. So we're, the change in the neighborhood and the things set forth in the plan of conservation development are not that far-fetched in terms of that concern. I'll close with these, my requests of this commission. I would ask that simply this commission adopt the same long historical record of the sensitivity to this particular zone and this particular neighborhood that has a long track record of recognizing that coexistence of small lots, residential homes that are within, my own home is within a few hundred feet of this proposed site, and I'm not even the closest one. So Mary Canine and Jeff Joyce, who are those 2 first houses on Birch, we've walked it off. It's a few hundred feet. And we have, we know we didn't buy houses in certainly the rural part of Darien. We get that. But, we also live with the consequences of living near retail zones that are open normal hours from 6 to 11. And we've had a few incidents there. We've had the police come where, the police were about to knock down Jeff Joyce's door because they thought somebody who had jumped the fence from the retail zone was in his house and that sort of thing. And that's happened in the last couple of years. The second is, make it very, very clear to the neighborhood and frankly to this applicant, in fairness to them, that 24/7 is a non-starter on this or any subsequent application. Like I said, Darien has a really limited history of permitting 24-hour businesses. None have gotten very well. And other very similar businesses to the one proposed here that are nearby, as we understand it, Mobile asked for 24 hours. It was denied, and it was denied because it was so close to a neighborhood. Third, give the traffic proper focus and analysis. The study presented on the 10th of November was vastly inadequate and inaccurate. It's not 100% clear to me, as somebody who's been in front of this commission, this is now the second time. I'm not exactly sure but what it sounded like to me is Mr. Galante and the LTA is going to comment on the traffic numbers that 7-Eleven has submitted. We would suggest a much, much deeper dive into that because we feel that's inadequate. The numbers don't pass the sniff test, and validating them for a couple of hours during a pandemic wouldn't seem to be the study that's proper given all the left turns we're dealing with in that neighborhood. Frankly, what I understood was they took the numbers that were coming in and out of Dutchess today and increased them by some amount. To me, if you're knocking down the building and replacing 12 gas pumps with a family restaurant, that's not about an uptick on the existing use. That's you wipe the thing out and start over. That's not apples and oranges, that's grapes and pumpkins. So please look at that. Please look at that traffic data really with a blank sheet of what you can expect in and out of that store given the volumes. I would focus on the volumes again. In terms of, again, this new use. I'll close with this. I don't understand how a how a gas and service station of this size that has 12 pumps and that much more square footage can somehow expect the same number of deliveries of either stock in the 4,000 square foot floor or 12 pumps is the same as the other stations in town that have substantially less infrastructure. That's another question that I would poke on if I were you. Many, many thanks. I really hope you'll back us up on these three asks of ours. Thank you for the time. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Appreciate it. Next up, we are going to have Christopher Christie.
Yes, hi.
Hold on one second, sir. And then after Christopher Christie, we have on my list Michael Tripoletti. So Fred, if you can identify that other gentleman, that'd be great.
So good evening,
welcome, sir.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Christie, and I live at 208 Old Kings Highway North at a rather infamous intersection between Raymond and Old Kings Highway North. I was very pleased to be alerted to this meeting. This is my first time engaging in Darien local, what I'll refer to gladly as politics. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. When the call commenced, I heard representatives for 7-Eleven speaking about the uniqueness of this property, how it would be owned by the corporate parent, how it would seem to be illustrating all of the very fine and new cutting edge offerings, if you will, of 7-Eleven. And I could clearly see the halo effect that it is intended to bring to the franchise. What I struggle with is understanding where the halo effect is to my neighborhood and to men and women such as Terry and his family who live in close proximity to this facility. When I moved to Darien, it was after much sacrifice and saving on behalf of me and my wife to find a town that reflected the values that we hold dear. And that does not include things such as tankers and 24-hour services and large-scale deliveries at all hours of the day and night. I too, like Terry, am somewhat pragmatic in that we may not live in the most prestigious part of town, but we live in town. And I take great pride in that accomplishment and to be able to provide that for my children. In the 6 years that I've lived in this location, I in the last year have experienced 2 violent car wrecks right in front of my house, where one truck hit one of the utility poles and blew it down, blowing out power for many here in town. And then more recently, a drunk gentleman was put on a high-speed chase through town, thankfully by a UPS driver that was able to commandeer the guy, if you will, but not before he'd actually skidded directly in front of my house, hit a telephone pole, and brought it down. I am very concerned that traffic on Old Kings Highway North will be negatively impacted in the rates and numbers of cars that we're hearing about right now. I don't see how that can be avoided. I also have, over the course of time, experienced this peculiarity of traffic flow around Dutchess and I-95, given that we've now expanded the on-ramp to I-95. So when you're coming off and you're having now to cross Post Road and cross yet again to get into the flow of traffic towards what is, Trader Joe's, that area is becoming awkward. People are confused. And I see that that will be a challenge if this were to go through. So I'll leave it at that. I think there's plenty of reason why 7-Eleven would choose that location. I think it bodes well for it to be there. However, I think we have to balance that with the comments made earlier about what we as a town and a community are prioritizing at this point in time. And I would ask that would be to look for different scales of business, different opportunities for property owners to develop and utilize and leverage their locations. But this is certainly something that I will be watching very closely going forward. It is not something that I would welcome for my children or for my neighbors or for their children either. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments. It's always nice to hear from the neighborhood. Next up, we have Michael
Cipoletti. He sent an
Cipoletti.
email for the record.
Perfect.
If I could just say your name and address too, and we understand you did send in a nice letter for the record too.
Yep, Michael Cipoletti, thanks for hearing me, 29 Pointed Woods Road. For those of you who don't know me, my wife, Jen, and I have 3 kids, and we both actually drove past the Birch Post Road interchange 12 different times today, and that's excluding sports for the kids that have been COVIDed. So we're one of many families who already are frustrated by the existing level of traffic at that interchange, which can often be very dangerous. I do have a letter on file in opposition to the project. I won't duplicate what others have said, but I just had to jump in the queue to offer my simple belief that, contrary to what Ms. Sushin and Mr. Owens have said, there is no evidence that I could see that this project was designed with Darien in mind. It is designed for 7-Eleven to draw hundreds of cars a day off I-95 to generate profit for 7-Eleven and create cataclysmic traffic for Darien. In exchange for what? Grocery we don't need or want, fueling we don't need or want, and a QSR food service that we do not need or want. So very simply, because of this, I urge P&Z to oppose all zoning amendments and all use permits for this project, which offers only downside for Darien. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Fred, before we go back to, is there anybody else in the queue that wants to speak, that wants to get added?
Yes, we have Mr. Pegler, who would like to speak.
Oh, Hutch is right next to us. He's not blind. I think your name is Hutch Pegler. Please, welcome.
Yeah.
State your name. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hutch Pegler, 31 Pointed Woods Road. I just wanted to make a comment, less perhaps as a neighbor, but more just on behalf of the entire community, for the record, to remind everyone listening, because I suspect that the scope is beyond the 140 letters that you've received that are dialed in now. There's a reason why Connecticut statutes provide 10 years for towns to prepare a plan of conservation and development, because it's an incredibly thoughtfully crafted document meant to be a set of principles and objectives and a blueprint for the future of the town. And as you can hear, and as you've already heard, as I've said, I think you just heard the tip of the iceberg in terms of community view. There is nothing about this proposal nor the multiple amendments that comports with your own plan of conservation and development. And so I just wanted to make that and highlight from page 36 of the 26 document, page 29 of the 2016 document that identifies the various constituents and members of the community that had input on this particular document. A discussion of issues with the Planning and Zoning Commission, input from the Board of Selectmen, input from the representative town meeting, 100-member representative town meeting, response to a survey of town department heads, field trips around Darien, interviews with key officials and stakeholders, responses to an online survey, and a community-wide meeting devoted to hearing from Darien residents. So I guess what I would say is that if we're not going to listen to the plan of conservation and development and have that be our guiding principle for making zoning decisions and approving waivers such as this, I'm not even sure why we do it. So I'll leave it in your hands to take from here.
Thank you, Mr. Pegler. Appreciate that. It's always nice to hear from him. I think we have another person that would like to speak. Is there a Mr. Smith that's chimed in? Fred, do you have that?
I do not.
What's the person's name?
David Smith?
David Smith. If you would like to speak, raise your hand. If your camera's on, there he is. I see him up top. Do you see him? He's in the top row on my screen, Fred. You can turn on his camera. I mean his microphone. And we'll set up another date. Yeah.
He would need to unmute himself.
Mr. Check, see if you unmuted yourself. I think you're going to be the last speaker for tonight because we are going to continue this too, I think. The date is the 9th.
Wednesday the 9th.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Okay. Mr. Smith, are you up? I think you're still muted, sir. There you go. That was Wilder that chimed in.
Mr. Albani, if Mr. Smith cannot speak, I'd like to speak.
Yeah, so would I.
Okay.
Here,
So
Michelle
the-
Lee.
Go ahead, Michelle.
All right, Mr. Smith,
I would
we're
like,
gonna put you on.
if I could, sorry, somebody said, go ahead, Michelle. I just have a quick follow-up to the resident at Old Kings Highway North. I
Hold
live
it,
on 7.
Mrs. Ma'am, could you just state
Yes?
your name? State your name
Sure,
for the
it's-
record and address, and you have to direct your questions to the commission, not to another speaker. You can ask us, and we can ask them.
So my name is Michelle Lee. I'm the resident of Berry Lane. I have 3 little kids, 4, 8, and
That other gentleman just muted the microphone for a minute.
in order for me to take my kids to various activities or grocery shopping, I typically take the post road, but I also know that there are a lot of back ways for me to get to Norwalk and to the activities further up post road. And I know that if this were to come in, the traffic absolutely would be disastrous, and I would be taking, along with numerous residents in the Tokenique area, will be taking the local roads, which is going to be, I think, very dangerous to what's already very heavily trafficked Raymond Street, Cliff Road, that takes a shortcut to the Costco area. So I think you have to realize it's really going to impact not just Post Road and Birch Road, Point of Roads that's immediately next to 7-Eleven, but really it's going to start affecting roads all over Darien, and that's just my point. Thank you.
I have a question for the commission. My question is.
Hold on 1 second, ma'am. Hold on 1
Yes.
second. Hold on 1 second, ma'am. There was another gentleman, I think it's Eduardo Sammy.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, if
Mr.
we could-
Chairman. So
Hold on 1 second.
my-
Hold on 1 second, sir. Fred, do you have any more people in the chat right now? Okay.
I do not have any additional individuals in the chat right now.
I would like to.
Okay.
I would like to
Let-
speak.
Let's hear from Mr. Sammy, and then I think we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My points are as follows.
Good, sir.
First of all, I fail to understand any type of value of 7-Eleven being.
We need your address, sir. We just need your address for the record. if
Yes,
you don't mind.
this is Eduardo Same, 220 Mansfield in
Thank you.
Darien. So my statement is as follows. First of all, I fail to understand any value to Darien of having a 7-Eleven on the Post Road, where we've all heard from Mr. Bach and everybody else that there is zero value to this proposal. It causes a traffic issue, a crime issue, value to property values, and ultimately, this is a townwide issue. We have over 1,000 petitions asking for this opposition and for it not to happen in Darien. And frankly, those are the people that are aware. A lot of this has frankly been, while you have posted this on the site, all of this has been below board. And frankly, at the end of the day, while 7-Eleven may have emailed or mailed people that are about 100 feet away from the proposed location, frankly, the vast majority of the town is not aware of the implications nor the impact to the residents anywhere in the surrounding community. So I encourage everybody to be aware of this. There is a petition ongoing, and this is absolutely against all the values that the attorney mentioned and all the values that you have actually proposed. This is on you at the end of the day, and I hold you accountable for this.
It's my turn to speak.
Yeah, can I please appoint speakers to, I'm just gonna remind everybody.
I address this.
State your name for the record. And
My
where
name-
you-
Fred, You gotta control it, Fred.
My name is Rita Bailey. I'm
Hold on,
address-
Mrs. Bailey. Hold on, Mrs. Bailey. Hold on one second. Commissioners, it's now 10:34. We were gonna give this application 2 hours. We're also gonna give it another date, which is either gonna be the, December 8th or 9th, that day. Do you want to hear a couple more public comments, or you want to push it to the next one?
Let's
I
hear
think
more.
we
Jen
let
wants to
seven
hear more.
over the 40 minutes, so I think we should give
Sarah
time
wants
to-
to hear more. Larry and Jim, any opinions?
I
Jim?
think we ought to cut it off. We're shortchanging
I-
the other people that have applications pending.
Larry, what do you
I
think?
think I have something very important to say.
Yeah.
All right.
To 11.
Yeah, I mean, we have. I'd like to hear from the rest a little more.
Okay.
Smith is next.
Right, let's go with Mr. Smith. Are you ready to go, sir?
I thought, excuse me,
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe we should set a certain number of additional comments and then end it.
All right, we'll
So
do
I-
2 more. We'll do Mrs. Bailey. We'll do Mr. Smith, who also sent a note in the chat.
I appreciate it. I addressed this to the commission. My name is Rita Bailey. I live at Sedgwick Village. I am curious how the Darien public, only within the last 2 weeks, has become aware of the 7-Eleven project. I realize, yes, it was posted in the Darien Times. Many people don't read the Times. It was posted on your website, and for most of us, there is no reason to go to your website unless we have a project that is somehow of concern to me. Within the last 2 weeks, I would say 88% of the community had no idea of this project. I question the transparency of the PNC. Furthermore, you've given all the wonderful reasons how this project or 7-Eleven has, how the wonderful thing. Can you tell me what does it bring to Darien? What are the benefits of this project to Darien? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Smith, you're up, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
State your name and address there, sir.
My name is David Smith. I live at 26 Birch Road.
Thank you.
Like Mr. Bach, I am a member of the group that Mr. Wilder represents. I won't repeat what to me seems a fairly open and shut case on the legal grounds. I think what has gone missing in the work to date is a few things. First, an adequate traffic study. I recognize that a certified traffic engineer has prepared materials for your consideration. That traffic engineer works for the applicant. They are bought and paid for. I also recognize that the commission and the town have retained the services of a independent review. However, the facts on the ground have not been adequately analyzed. Mr. Wilder indicated that the community, this street, this neighborhood, who will be severely impacted by this, feel that we need additional technical work to bring to the commission's attention the facts on the ground, which are that we are already unable to use these intersections. It is a very dangerous corner. You have to be a very experienced driver. And I do not, nor do you want to see a case where when we are past COVID and the school buses are coming up and down the street, and mom is trying to take her beautiful children down the turnpike to get them to the nursery school, we have the kind of traffic problems that this will bring. We need to have a fair, full, complete vetting of the traffic issues. That has not occurred to this point, and it needs to happen, and we need the time. The other thing I think that is critical to bring to the fore are the issues relating to crime. The applicant's own expert or internal expert, again bought and paid for, spent a great deal of time, despite having not actually seen the site or the proposal itself, explaining how the fishbowl effect permitted the people inside the building and outside the building to view what was going on. We've learned tonight, of course, that the windows are blackened out. The fishbowl is a red herring. It's a falsehood, just like the traffic study is. We all know that Officer Bateman was killed on that site, and his assailant, who murdered him, escaped on that very exit ramp and was never found. Do we want to have Mom and her precious children and our Darien Police Department put at risk? Of course not. The safety issues and the crime issues that are part and parcel by the applicant's own admission of this scale of convenience store have no place in this town. And we have not explored those issues in sufficient depth, nor have we actually heard or seen written comment from those in town responsible for our protection. I do not want, nor do the taxpayers of this town want the 7-Eleven, the Darien Police Department bogged down, keeping us safe from something that shouldn't be here in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would like to try to wrap this up for tonight, knowing that we're going to have this again.
We're gonna have a special meeting. Can we check with the commission what works better, Tuesday the 8th or
Yeah,
Wednesday the
let me
9th?
just talk to Amy again real
Yeah,
quick.
what works better?
Amy,
Can I-
so, yeah, sure, Jim, what's up?
Steve, on the question of rescheduling, I think I recall seeing in the massive papers that have circulated over this past week, a request by someone to leave sufficient time for ZBA to consider the application before we're invited to take action. If my recollection is correct, I'd like to suggest that that be taken into account when we talk about rescheduling another hearing.
The ZBA meeting is on December 16th,
And they have another one January 13th.
January
So
13th.
we'll have a meeting in 2 weeks, and then we'll have another one right after January 13th.
Yeah, so we're gonna have one either the 8th or the 9th. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then we're done for the year. We're gonna pick it up again in January, which, as I said at the beginning, and in that time frame between our 9th meeting and in January is when ZBA meets, because we don't meet in December. So, and with that said, from the outset of this meeting tonight, we said this hearing is not being closed until probably the end of January and not going to be decided until 65
Fair
days
enough.
after that. So we're not,
Thanks,
we're not closing.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
Steve,
Yes, sir.
Steve, I just want to note for the record that Mr. Mike Lorelli expressed an interest to speak tonight, and Mr. Maslin also an interest to speak tonight, just for the record.
Yeah, we can't, we don't, we're running out of time. And we are adding a meeting. Let me just talk to Amy for a second.
Just, is Mike, sorry, Bob, is Mike, us?
Lorelli's in the-
Yeah, I mean, why do we let Mike speak? I get it, but there's two left.
No, I got it.
Eleven has had how many meetings, and they wanted 40 minutes tonight and they were given well over an hour.
Okay.
And that into residents, that ate into the public's time.
Right, it's also my fault too. I asked a lot of questions.
Well, I don't know whose fault it is. It's not about fault. It's just about like ethics.
Well, in all honesty, Karen, we still have other business on our agenda.
I know, but like, when we let the petitioner go over and we told the public, and they,
We got 15 minutes left. All right, Amy. Some of the items we didn't really get to your memo. Right? So we're gonna have to. I really want you to address some of those items on the memo, which is especially the fishbowl effect and the security item. So I'm gonna have to ask you to come back and be able to address that in and of yourself. I also, it's in the record. It came in last time. And I know the traffic guys are still working on it, but do you know if your traffic consultant who is Malone?
No.
McMahon.
McMahon, I'm sorry. I keep saying Malone. I don't know why I said it.
They have a traffic engineer too, so I understand your
Yeah.
confusion.
Does McMahon have the memo from Chief Captain Rob Shredders from the Darien Police Department with regard to the accidents that occurred on that strip between Old Kings Highway and the and exit 13?
Yes, he does. It was put in right before the last hearing, and so we've given that, and I believe it's also been sent to Mike Galante.
Okay, because that memo, it's yeah, the cover memo is dated November 4th, and the chiefs of captains Shredders put it in about the 154 accidents on that strip. So I just want to make sure that we address that over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, we have that.
And just for edification for anyone that's listening, we have had at least 2 traffic reports done by McMahon transportation engineers that represent the applicant, and we've already had 2 traffic study peer reviews by Frederick Clark and Associates, also known as Hardis and Hanover, which is Michael Galante. He's reviewed 2 of them. And so right now that means we've had 4, and they're still working on 2 more. So the traffic issue and the accident issue, just as I brought up, is that is still out there. Nothing's been decided on that, and we're still studying. Okay. With that said, commissioners, I would like to move on. If someone really has a compelling reason to add some more speakers for tonight, it's now 10:47. We're supposed to look at 3 more applications. We are adding a meeting on the 8th or the 7th or 8th of December.
8th or 9th.
8th or 9th of December. But we're gonna let them go. We're gonna blow past 10 o'clock. I mean 11 o'clock. Jim, Larry, Jen, Kara.
I'm just going to state for the record that I think it was, if you're going to allow the petitioner who's already had, right, this is their public hearing, so they have every right to speak and have every ounce of evidence they want presented in the record. I believe it was already discussed, the time that was allotted to them. And that tonight the public would be allowed to speak. There's 3 more people who want to speak.
I got it. I hear you, Kara.
I feel like we let the petitioner go over.
I hear you.
And now the public, there's 3 more people. Let them speak.
George, what would you like to do?
Unless we're scared to hear what the public has to say.
With Kara, that's not a fair statement. You know that we're adding a special meeting on this.
They may not be available. They're here right now. They were here last week.
Kara, I got it. I understand.
Okay, don't get upset with me. I'm just saying, let the people speak.
I understand, Kara. George, any opinion?
Sure. I think written submissions are helpful. Anybody who wanted to speak tonight should do that if they can't come back some other time, but we're well beyond the allotted time for this. We have several other applications to deal with that I think we should proceed on now.
Jen, what do you think? We have a meeting set aside for the 8th or 9th for public, just public.
Let them speak.
Jen?
Sorry.
Or Larry?
I already said, I think that if there's 2 people left, and Bob will be very, very short in his statement. Okay, then Bob, I love you, Bob, but if you have time the next meeting, then maybe you should submit something written form for us. But
This is Fred.
I already volunteered to go next time.
Oh, you're the best. That's so nice, Bob. So why don't, there's a mic that has been waiting, right? Who else? We have one person, Mike, is that it?
I believe it's just Mike Lorelli at this point.
Then let's let Mike go.
I'm sorry. I wrote something in the comments. It's Samantha Galt. I just wanted to echo what David was saying because I'm a mother who's lived on this street for 11 years.
Ma'am, you can't speak out of turn. I apologize.
Okay.
You have to chime in, and we're trying to keep this orderly. If it was an in-person meeting, we wouldn't do any of this. People were coming up and down saying the podium. Jim and Larry, what do you want to do? We got two ladies that say yes. Give me one more. We got George that says no. I think we should move on. What do you guys want to do?
Move on.
Larry?
We're going to be doing this for many more meetings. We have a lot of other people that also have business in front of us, and
All right, so we got
important too. So let's move
we
on.
have
We have another meeting, and I have a feeling we might even have more meetings after that.
Okay, we have 4 move-ons. We have 2 that's now, so we're gonna move on. Okay, Amy, we're gonna have our next meeting on either the 8th or 9th.
Mr. Chairman, just to avoid any issues, I think you should, so it's clear on the record, and frankly, given the members of the public and freedom of information laws, I think you should decide which night the meeting will be held, so everybody on the call knows exactly which night to plan to reconvene. And certainly it was our understanding coming into tonight that if there was a public meeting, there was a continuation, it was likely to be substantially devoted to the public. If there is anything you would like us to plan to address at that meeting, like our operations memo or anything else, but otherwise we're happy to, allow the full night for the public comment. So that way we don't run long again this evening because of questions or comments, whatever your preference is, but I would ask that you make a decision about which night the meeting is so everybody's clear about when the continuation is.
That's the question gonna go. Would you care if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, the 8th or the 9th? Which one's better for you?
We have, particularly if it's public comment, we can be available if there was something you wanted. I've notified our team that both nights were options, and so I don't see any issues.
Okay, commission members, Tuesday the 8th or Wednesday the 9th?
Tuesday.
I prefer Wednesday the 9th.
Okay.
I've sort of become accustomed to Tuesdays, but I don't feel strongly about it.
I would
Jen?
prefer Tuesday.
Tuesday, George?
No preference.
Jen, Kara?
No preference.
All right, let's stick with Tuesday. The only one that said no preference, Jim can adjust. Let's go Wednesday the 9th, because that makes Larry. Okay?
I think two other commissioners said it's not a strong preference for me. I think 2 other commissioners were.
If it's a strong, do you have to have it there? I can pivot. It's it's fine.
Well, can we go with a Wednesday then?
Got it. Jen, you're good? And Jim, you're okay?
I'm okay.
Thank you. All right, so with that said, we're gonna continue this hearing to Wednesday, December 9th, starting at 8 p.m. The meeting's gonna be basically dedicated to public comment. If Amy Suchin speaks, she'll speak at the back end of the meeting. And her homework is gonna be able to clarify some of the items in her memo that is dated November 19th. We're not gonna get into traffic that night, right?
No, it's
No,
just
good.
gonna be public comment.
It's gonna be solely public comment, okay? So with that said, this hearing is, you say
Officially
adjourned?
continued to
Continued.
December 9th, Wednesday, December 9th at 8 p.m.
Fantastic. All righty. Thank you, everybody that came in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All righty. Moving on. The next item on our agenda, special permit application number 318, site plan Spring Grove Cemetery Associates, 41 Hecker Avenue. Proposal to construct 4 new columbariums within the Spring Grove Cemetery in accordance with section 405G of the zoning regulations and to perform related site development activities. The 0.3 acre plus or minus subject parcel is located on the northwest side of Boston Post Road at its intersection with Hecker Avenue, as shown on Assessor's Map number 41 as lot 19 in the R1/3 zone. So, Jeremy, what do we got?
Attorney Michael Murray is here on behalf of Spring Grove Cemetery. The regulations got amended a few years ago to specifically allow columbarium and by special permit. And this is the special permit application put forth. You have copies of the materials in your packets. It's basically little pathways and a structure, and Mike can guide us from there.
Hey, Jeremy,
Yes,
before we start, I just want to put on the record, I own a plot in Spring Grove. That's where my wife is buried. So if this is an issue that I need to recuse from, I'm happy to do it. If not, I think I can excuse me, I can be fair on this one.
It's fine by me. If the
Anyone
applicant minds. See, it's usually the applicant that we decide on that. Mr. Murray, do you have a problem with that?
No problem whatsoever.
Thank you, sir.
go ahead, Mike.
Oh, thank you all for your time. I'll
Thank
try to keep it brief. As Mr. Ginsburg pointed out, we're here to propose